I'm calling the meeting to order, the regular meeting of the Delray Beach City Commission. May we have a roll call?
Mr. Markert?
Here.
Mr. Long?
Here.
Ms. Cassell?
Here.
Ms. Burns?
Here.
Mayor Carney?
Here. If you could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We have the approval of the agenda. Did you all get the final little amendment that was thrown into, everyone has gotten it, so we all have a full agenda?
Thank you.
Yes,
Can
it's
I
right here.
just, I was hoping to ask a question. I just was in back asking Mr. Dunkley about item 6F. Do you mind if we pull that and make it 7AA? Is it still 6F? Let me see after the changes.
6F is?
Yes, thank you. 6F,
Right. So we're going to make 6F
7AA.
7AA.
Thank you.
All right, I would like to pull 6C.
6C?
Yes, I don't see the family here yet, but just in case they show up, if they want to speak on the resolution for the revenue.
Commissioner, I don't think your mic is on.
I'm sorry?
Commissioner Burns' mic wasn't on.
It's way up in the air. 6C.
All right, 6C is without objection, right? We're going to pull that. Is there any other things that anybody would like to pull?
No, thank you.
That'll be 7.
Good.
That'll be 7A, B.
Okay. I was going to do 601 just to talk about that, but I don't think we really need to because Missy and Hugh, you're going to be. I just would like a little breakdown of what the resolution for the agreement for the services, what's the scope of the services, et cetera, for the Pompey Park because it's $2,656,000. I'd like to hear from somebody on that. So that could be 7CC. Okay, good. With those changes, can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Great. We now have presentations. We have.
Should I say as amended?
sorry.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's passed. I'm sorry.
Too fast.
I assumed too much.
You know.
Right. We're delighted this afternoon to have with us two members of the Palm Beach County School Board. They are going to be discussing the acceptance of a grant that we had received. So would you like to make the introduction, Mr. Moore?
I would, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much. So, as stated, we have our representatives here from the school district. And, of course, what we are referring to is the Karen Foundation Grant Awards that the City of Delray Beach has been able to make available to respective schools located in the corporate limits of Delray Beach, Florida. So, it's Erica Whitfield and, goodness gracious,
Edwin Ferguson.
Mr. Ferguson, I'm attempting to enunciate. Mr. Ferguson are both here from the school district of Palm Beach County to offer their words of appreciation to that effect. And this is in tradition of many other municipalities throughout the county who have had the opportunity to work closely with the school district as outlined. With that, Ms. Whitfield, I think you're up first, followed by Mr. Ferguson. And thank you all.
Very much. Thank you so much, City Manager. And to the Mayor and City Commissioners, I am so grateful to be here. I'm Erica Whitfield, one of your school board members for the City of Delray Beach, along with my colleague, Edwin Ferguson. And we come to really just say thank you for the consideration of our schools. Delray has long-standing been a huge advocate of their public school system, and we are so grateful for your work with the education board that you have had for such a long time to allocate funds for our students and for the betterment of the schools in Delray Beach just means so much. 7 schools applied for funds, and all 7 were awarded the funds from the City of Delray Beach. These funds originally were to work on many different projects as far as support for the schools, but it has come to our attention that the schools have needed more focus on reading and math programming. And so this is going to go to specific programming that had been funded through the ESSER dollars within our funds from COVID, post-COVID, that are coming to an end. And so those dollars are drying up, and these dollars are going to come in to support those schools to really help. So I think the work that you will see coming out of these funds is crucial, and it means a lot to the students of Delray Beach, especially with their academic performance, which I know is of premier concern to the commission. I know that I just was speaking to Commissioner Long about potentially having a meeting for us to discuss further how we can continue to improve the schools in Delray Beach. And so I just want to let you know how excited I am to have any conversations with you all, and just again say, that I'm here for the city of Delray Beach, and I would very much love any time to discuss the schools and how we can work together. And just say once again, thank you sincerely for considering your schools and putting financial standing behind them, because it really makes the difference between a great school system when a city really does get behind them. So a huge thank you, and I'll allow my fellow board member to continue to speak. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. So I'm Edwin Ferguson. I'm the District 7 rep, which covers part of the east side of Delray. So I'm happy that Board Member Whitfield said all that she said, so I can get into some other topics in my brief time. So I was requested by staff to apprise you all of a couple of things. So in regard to the historic Carver High School site, I'm sure many of you, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure you're aware of it as well in terms of the renovation work that's taking place there. First of all, finally got the open house secured, so we got our CO. So we're gonna set the town hall open house sometime in June so the city can come out and see how great the Adult Ed Center is there. So stay tuned for that. I'll be sure to make sure staff gets the flyer out to you here shortly. Also, I was asked to let you all know that in regard to the current buildings there, Building 1 and Building 12, Building 12 is the cafeteria. Those are both original buildings at the site. The board has approved $20 million to renovate those buildings. They'll be incorporated into the historic Carver campus and offer additional adult ed and vocational training. But also, as to Building 2, the state apparently expects us to save Building 2, although we like to demolish it because it doesn't fit into the adult ed map. I was told that one of the reasons, there's several reasons, but one of them is that it's not one of the original buildings. We don't have adequate parking. If we were to renovate Building 2, we have to have a certain number of parking spaces per square foot, if you will, so the math is not working there. So that's another reason why we want to get rid of that building. And also, in terms of Building 2, the district would need the state's Department of Historic Resources to allow us to demolish it. So we're kind of working on that right now. And in terms of the city of Delray, I know that there was some discussion amongst several of you all over these past few years in regard to what to do with Building 2. The request from staff is that if the city would be so inclined to do so, that you would agree to write a letter to the state in support of Building 2 being demolished. Because as I said, it's not really feasible for us to maintain it for the reasons that I mentioned to you before. District can even draft that letter for you to sign, but again, I guess you all would need to make a decision as to whether you're amenable to assisting in that effort. We're not seeking any funding contribution from the city to do this, just need you, John Hancock, as far as that goes. One last thing I want to talk to you about, we as a board are going to discuss change of school times. As you all may or may not know, the state has legislated that school times change effective in 2026. I think it's a bad idea, but I'm not in Tallahassee, so we follow instructions as directed. So there are 3 options right now, and really quickly I want to tell these to you. Don't worry if you don't catch them now, because we're going to start sending out surveys for the residents and yourselves included to opine as to which option you like. So the first option would have elementary school starting at 7:30 and ending at 1:35. Of course, most elementary schools start at 8 right now. High schools will start at 8:45 and end at 3:45. It's a lot later than they currently start. Middle school would be at 10:15 and end at 4:50, which is not too far from the current start times for most middle schools. Option 2, which I would say you all should not support, middle schools will start at 8 and end at 2:35. High school will start at 9:15 and end at 4:35. Elementary, and this is why I hate it, will start at 9:45 and not end until 3:50. Option 3, high school start at 8:30 and end at 3:50. Elementary school start at 9 and end at 3:05, and middle school start at 10:20 and end at 4:55. Again, nothing set in stone. We're going to talk about it amongst ourselves at the upcoming board meeting in June. And again, you all are definitely going to have your opportunity to input and guide us as well. But I think they're all bad, frankly, but option won't be the least of the 3. So that's all I have right now. And if you have any questions for myself or Board Member Whitfield, we're here to answer as best we can. Thank you.
Any members of the commission?
No, I just want to thank our two board members for coming in, and as I mentioned, Erica beforehand, we chat about our two board members coming in just on Friday, and so it's kind of great that you're here. I think we would love to have some kind of meeting on the books soon that we could schedule if you guys would be kind enough to come in and meet with us and just talk about strategies that maybe be available that we might not know about to try and help some of our schools with those scores that we saw last time you guys came in.
Thank you so much. If I can just say, I've done this previously at other cities, and we can bring forward a presentation, a little bit more detailed information on your schools so that we can share with you kind of where the standing is for them right now. One of the things that I have been looking into is the SEQ data, which is our school effectiveness questionnaire that just got our results back recently. So we can see how your citizens, how your students, your parents view the schools from within. So whether or not they are happy or not happy, and what the things are that kind of could be improved from that. And so I think that could be very beneficial for you to understand if your schools are truly serving your students. I think you'll find that many of them are, but I think that's something we could delve into, as well as the scores of the students, which is always of utmost priority. So if you allow us to create a presentation, my fellow board member and I can come in, maybe give that to you all in a smaller meeting, and then really kind of delve into any direction that you'd like to give at that point.
Right. Commissioner Casal?
Thank you. Yeah, we were discussing, thank you both, by the way, for coming, for your service. We were discussing at our goal setting that we need to really start looking into how we as a city can help you help us. But one of the things that I would like to know when you do this presentation, I think our staff has attempted to get this information. We have a lot of taxpayer money going into the Palm Beach County school system, a lot. Our taxpayers are contributing greatly, and we have no idea how much is coming back. I would like that information. We would like to know from what we're putting out, what are we getting back and where is it going? And if you could provide that to us, we would really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Would it be possible for any of you to just simply email that to staff so they can kind of work on this in advance? And of course,
So the city manager, please make sure that we get an email.
Absolutely, and consistent with this discussion we had this past Friday via goal setting session, so Ms. Janai Bowens, the city's education and workforce development coordinator, will be working to communicate accordingly so that we can report back to the commission the respective information. So that reiterates what was committed this past Friday. So to have the opportunity to communicate to the board members, excellent.
And I appreciate that. When I had asked her, she said, Ms. Bowens had indicated that she had trouble getting that information, and I'm hopeful that perhaps you can get it for us, because we would like it.
I think it would be more effective if you send it to boardquestions@palmbeachschools.org.
That's what I mean.
Because we get it, and in that regard, that makes it easier for us to kind of make sure staff keep
However we can get it, we'll do what we have to. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Burns?
Yes, just want to say, just looking forward to the continued collaboration with the school district and the city of Delray, and congratulations on receiving the grant.
All right.
Commissioner Martin? Nothing. Again, thank you both for being here. I don't know if I raised a lot of questions at the last goal setting really regarding the performance of the students at both the younger grades, but certainly the graduating ages. And I'm not really happy with the results that we're getting. And I actually went to sit and watch the education board yesterday. I arrived late, but I heard there's a lot of good people on that board that really want to try to make some changes. So I'm going to welcome the opportunity to sit down with you to try to develop some kind of, in the old days they had interlocal agreements. I don't know what we have these days, but something where we can tell you what we think you need. You're doing a great job, by the way, on the facilities. I'm the elementary school and great jobs. But it's the test results that I'm the most concerned about. So as long as everyone's, we will definitely be setting up some kind of a meeting with you all, workshop or however it's going to be, so we can really discuss what you need from us, what we need from you, and what our expectations are for the money we're throwing in there, what we should be getting back in terms of test performance results of our students. But other than that I really appreciate you both being here. You will make sure that we also draft a letter, or you will draft a letter and send it. You'll see whether or not we can discuss whether we're going to sign it. I don't know the issue, so I'm not going to say yes or no, sure. but certainly we'll look at it.
Okay.
Anyway, that it?
Yes, sir. And to iterate another point pertaining to the matter during the goal-setting session, a collaborative presentation involving Delray Beach Education Board members to be offered during the June 4th City Commission meeting. We are coordinating that, and that will be the opportunity to proceed along the lines that you just discussed, Mayor Carney. So that will be the overall structure, and that's only 4 weeks from now.
Perfect. Thank you both very much.
All right, have a good night.
We now have the Florida Green Building Coalition Awards. Kent is somewhere here. There you are. You will be making the presentation and everything. So you're on.
Good afternoon. Ken Edwards, Sustainability Officer for the City of Delray Beach, Mayor and Commission. I'm very happy to be here today to present on 2 awards that we recently received from the Florida Green Building Coalition. And don't let the name fool you. They don't just deal with buildings. We actually have a Florida Local Green Government certification. Our latest certificate is straight out this door here on the wall, so I encourage you to take a look at that. Back in 2021, we were the highest scoring local green government, and so one of our awards is for that. Because of COVID, they had not had an award meeting, and that's why it's from 2021. But still, that was a great accomplishment, more than 200 categories of points. So everything from LED lights in parking lots and parks to green cleaning products that are used throughout buildings, automatic shutoffs, EV chargers, a whole array of things, education, signage at parks regarding habitat, just a tremendous number, and worked with all of the departments to gather this information and submit that. And we had a bronze certification. COVID did take a toll on us, but next time in 2026 when it comes up, hopefully we'll be able to step that up. But we were the highest scoring at that time, and something definitely to be proud of and build on. The other award was a leadership award, and it was for the passage of the Green Building Ordinance, which really was an amazing step. And Commissioner Casal was here at the time for that. But everyone will have a chance to get into the act because the ordinance was passed with a reevaluation period of 1 year after execution. So that date, 1 year after, is November 1st, 2024. And we're going to do outreach and hopefully have some things that we can do to take this great ordinance and even move it forward more. Also like to mention that the city ordinance has gotten a tremendous amount of attention from our neighbors. Boca Raton is working on an ordinance right now, in fact, that really was jump-started. And I have gotten calls from and participated in presentations to other cities' boards, and also for all 4 of the certification programs that are cited in the ordinance. So not only is it good for the city, and it is very good for the city, but it's of regional importance and something that the city can be very proud of. So very nice award.
Well done. Any comments from any members of the commission?
No, I would just say thank you so much. Since you came on board here in the city of Delray Beach, we've accomplished a great deal under your leadership, and I really appreciate you more than you know. Thank you.
Commissioner?
Just to reiterate, say thank you and great work from you and your team. And it's great to see Delray as a leader locally when it comes to green building and sustainability. So thank you for your hard work, Ken.
And I just want to say congratulations, and I love it when I hear that Boca is chasing us. Love that. Rob and I were talking about that earlier, and it's we've got quite a few initiatives that we have going on in the city, and we have one of our neighbors watching us very closely because we're doing things so well.
Just thank you for what you do, and congratulations on those 2 awards.
Congratulations, and I'm confident that we're going to do fine on November the 1st.
You got it.
With our follow-up. I'm absolutely fine. Thank you very much, Ken.
Thank you.
We now have the 2024 Historic Preservation Board Awards. Michelle Hoyland, here she is, walking up.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Deputy Vice Mayor, and Commissioners, and the public. I know it's a long meeting with a long list of wonderful proclamations. I inadvertently wore green today, but I see that it's a well-supported effort for Mental Health and Trauma Care Awareness Month.
I'm Irish, so green's a great color.
Thank you, as am I. Okay, so Michelle Hoyland, Principal Planner for the record. I am, for those of you who I haven't met, I am the city's historic preservation lead in our Development Services Department. And my team and I had reinstituted the Preservation Board Awards. This is our 4th year bringing it back. We began in COVID. So tonight, and I'll be as quick as possible, we have one award recipient. But I'm pleased to introduce Ruth and Alan Baum, and I don't know if they are in attendance, but I think they're watching virtually if they weren't able to make it down. Every year, May is National Historic Preservation Month. There's a proclamation coming forward in a little bit designating Delray Beach's May, honoring Preservation Month. We join in hundreds of communities across the nation as we celebrate the efforts of people in the community who are making a contribution to saving historic structures and recognizing those people through the theme of people saving places is what we're here to do right now. So each year we look back to see what properties had a certificate of occupancy, meaning the project's complete, it's been through the board, and see who's eligible to be honored. These owners came through with a renovation on their property. This is the People Saving Places Media Kit from the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And so this is 105 Northeast 7th Street. This is on the north side of the road between Swinton and Northeast 2nd Avenue. This home had gone through renovations in years past, including construction of a 2-story structure, which you can see over there on the left-hand side, carefully placed to the rear, not to affect the historic facade, which is what you're seeing in the front of the building. They also installed a swimming pool back then with paver brick walkways, gates. So over the years, this property has been owned by a few different owners and always carefully cared for. In April of 2021, they came through for construction of a new garage, which you can see over on the left-hand side of the screen, a 1-story, 2-car garage addition. They also had a very small addition in the rear, a trellis feature off to the side. Everything was just very carefully considered. You can see they repainted the structure, did some landscaping improvements. These photographs were taken on Friday. So here's just a few more before and afters. And here you can see that garage. One of the important factors for historic structures, there's this idea that you can't improve historic structures, and you certainly can. It's just doing so carefully so that the original structure still stands out. So we can still recognize what was originally there. And placing that garage back a bit off the front facade achieved that goal for this property. And just another photo here. I'd also like to recognize the members of the Historic Preservation Board, Chairman Jim Chard, John Miller, Peter Dwyer, Ivan Heredia, Chris Cabezas, Kristen Finn, and John Brewer. They made their decision last month, and we did an award for the owners, which you can see here, and thank you, Mayor, for signing. Which will be given to Alan and Ruth Baum. So this concludes my presentation. I want to congratulate them on their exemplary efforts and thank you for your time.
Great. Any comments from the members of the commission? Anyone? Thank you very much. And it's a great job. Thank you. We have a quarterly financial review. Mr. Dunkley is around somewhere. There you are, approaching the bench, so to speak.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the commission. I'm going to wait a bit until the slide show comes up. So I would like to first thank you for giving me the opportunity to present to you the city's budgetary performance for the first 6 months of the fiscal year. And the total citywide budget is approximately $457 million. And the bulk of which, actually 41%, is concentrated in what we consider as the general fund. And the general fund houses such functions as police, fire protection, public works, parks and recreation, general governmental services, and the like. For this reason, we'll be spending a good bit of our discussion this evening with respect to this fund. So when you look at the general fund in a silo, with 50% of the year having passed, the first row, which is taxes, is actually a catch-all for various types of taxes. We have utility service tax, local business tax, property tax, which is the largest of those amounts. Property taxes, which are budgeted at $101 million, is a good bit of the general fund. And thus far, we have collected about 90% of the property taxes. When we look at the other areas, one thing jumps out at you with respect to the year-to-date budgetary performance, and it is that permits and fees is roughly about 60% of the budgeted figure, and some of the revenue amounts are greater than in the previous years. The largest amount in the permits and fees section there is electric franchise fees, which is the largest source. It's $3.3 million collected year to date versus 3.1 from the previous years. Another item that is slightly below budget is fines and forfeitures. That's 35% of what we have budgeted. And that is primarily due to the fact that we've collected less, roughly $561,000 versus $1 million that was collected at this time last year. And the fines and forfeitures are primarily for parking violations, late fees, and school crossing guard fines. We have seen a slight decrease in those areas. The miscellaneous revenue is a catch-all for investment earnings, rents and royalties, contributions from the CRA, and that line item is slightly below the 50% mark, primarily because we bill the CRA for its contribution to city services after the quarter is ended. Other sources, that is not a surprise that it is at 20%, because that incorporates the budgeted surplus, which even though we have budgeted that at $8.6 million, it is our hope that we do not have to dip into the fund balance to balance the budget. So that's why that is by design. It's 20% of the budgeted amount. Overall, we have collected 69% of the total budgeted revenues, and that is largely due to the fact that property taxes are paid, they're front-ended. By the end of December, most individuals have paid their property taxes, so we have collected the predominant amount of what constitute the lion's share of the city's budget. As far as expenditures go, Personnel services account for 57% of the total general fund expenditures. And through 6 months of the fiscal year, overall for the general fund, we've actually expended 55% of our budgets. When we look at this, not so much from what they called function or an expenditure by category, we look at this on a departmental basis. Primarily, all of the departments are below their budgets. Some are slightly above, which I won't necessarily pick on any particular department, but as the chart depicts, some are slightly above. For those that are below their budgets, the primary reason is because of vacancies. Also, if we go back to the previous slide, the operating expenditures, some of those budgeted amounts are somewhat episodic in that they're either projects or other professional services, things that are not necessarily evenly expended throughout the year. If we go to the second slide with respect to the departmental budget, we see that some of the amounts are overly expended as compared to a 50% half of year time frame. And the fact is that those two are somewhat seasonal in nature. The recreational facilities, we have tennis tournaments, we have the $1 million, there are other recreational facilities. That is the interlocal agreement or the contract with the Downtown Development Authority for management of the Old School Square. The miscellaneous line item, that is pretty much, it represents just the expenses that we pay for grants to nonprofit organizations as well as bank and service credit card merchant fees. So when we look at the data for what we term the enterprise funds, so the enterprise funds, they operate on a basis that is somewhat different from the general fund. The general fund's primarily emphasis is we're going to provide service and pay for those service with taxes and what they called non-exchange transactions. We're going to tax you, and hopefully those taxes will cover the services. These funds, however, they derive most of their revenues from user fees and charges, such as water and sewer fees. So it's primarily you pay for the services that you're receiving at that point in time. And all of the revenues exceed the expenses. One thing, with the exception of the building fund, I have it there, it is not an enterprise fund. However, it operates in a manner in that it's the building fees should be covered by the cost to enforce the South Florida Building Code. We have a slight dip in revenues from the previous years. Just one thing I wanted to point out, the water and sewer fund, you see the revenues are outpacing the expenses by a fair amount. And the reason for that is this is excluding depreciation expense, which is essentially how much will we have to pay to replace our long-lived assets. And depreciation for that fund is about $4 million. So when we factor into depreciation, we're hoping to kind of nudge out for the year. Speaking of the water and sewer funds, we felt that it was somewhat advisable for us to report to you at this juncture the total credit adjustments that's been extended to the customers of the water and sewer utility because of the fact that we have been estimating usage for some of those customers as a result of the fact that of the encoder issue that was presented to you during the January 4th meeting. So year to date, we have extended $571,000 in credits. We have 804 affected accounts, which is of the 22,571 total active meters. Trying to get this to slide to advance. I guess it's going too fast or too slow. In terms of the city's cash and investment position, the city primarily has 3 buckets within which we consider where to place our idle resources. And we either place them in the bank or as bank deposits. We have what we call our liquidity portfolio, which is managed in-house. And we have our core portfolio, which is managed by a third-party investment consultant. Coupled together, these total $193.5 million. The core portfolio, which is managed by a third-party entity, has 49% of its holdings in U.S. Treasuries, 24% in corporates, which are primarily commercial paper, 19% in asset-backed securities, and the remainder are in agency and securities, supranational, like the Asian Development Bank, and entities of that nature that serve a purpose that is nonprofit in nature. When we look at the portfolio performance for the quarter and for the year, and excuse the slight small font, this is somewhat, even with glasses on, it's a little bit of a challenge for myself, but
We can do this.
precisely, man. But so basically, I promise I won't excerpt this from the investment presentation. However, so for the 3 months, we have a total dollar return of $531,000. This, in effect, we're beating the benchmark, and the benchmark had a gross return of 30 basis points or 0.3%. The portfolio had roughly, we're close to 0.5%, or 0.47%. Even net of fees, we're beating the benchmark. What we look at as another measure of our performance is what's our, we look at the duration, which is an interest rate sensitivity measure, which tells us how do we fare if interest rates are increasing or decreasing. The benchmark had a duration of 1.76 years. The city's portfolio at 1.77 years. Even though we're slightly hedging the benchmark, that's good because we expect interest rates to either level, to not move at all, or decrease. So when interest rates are increasing, it's best for you to be in a shorter duration. When interest rates are decreasing, it's best for you to be in a longer duration because, for the most part, you're not going to be affected by the decrease. You're earning a higher rate of interest. And so we feel that the portfolio performance has exceeded the benchmark, and we think that for the very near term, that's going to be the case. And aside from that, I am available for any questions that you might have.
To the commission, would you like to go first?
Thank you for that presentation.
You're very welcome.
So going to the attachment, the income statement, the first document, summary through 3/31/24, you discussed this other source and you combined the two line items. One is 6.7 million, the other is 10 million. Why are those not combined as you did in your report? And what part of that do you anticipate is our reserves that you're pulling money out of to balance the budget?
So by design in the summary, I segregated it so that there would be a one-to-one correspondence. in the report, I combined them so
Right.
as to, for ease of discussion.
I don't know what the one-to-one means, but I guess what I'm trying to determine is what other sources besides the reserve encompass those other sources.
Oh, understood. So in the other sources, just to quickly flip there, the other sources includes contributions from the Water and Sewer Fund. They're primarily payments for administrative fees from the building fund.
How
all
much
of
do
the
you think
enterprise.
we'll be taking? How much did you? I wasn't here when this budget was approved. In the approval process, how much of our reserves were you anticipating pulling to balance this budget?
Good question. So, Vice Mayor, we have budgeted, with the amendments, we have budgeted that we'll be using $8.6 million of budget prior year surplus to date.
Okay, and then, but you and I had this discussion. The IAFF contract was negotiated and voted in on November 7th.
Correct.
But that's an additional $3.754 million that is not in this report.
Yeah, the 3.5 is inclusive of pension contributions. We have already paid that for the year. I suspect
That was a salary increase. And you and I have an email exchange where you said, we haven't done the budget adjustment yet, because I had asked, where is
We
that
have
money
not.
coming from?
Yeah, we
Right,
have
so
not.
we still have another $3.754 million.
The 3.7, when we give you the impact, that it is inclusive of pension. So
I guess my point is that's not in this budget right now that we're not
Exactly. It is
looking
not.
at. So there's an
It's not.
additional $3 million
Not
we have to
three.
figure out how to pay for.
not as much.
Okay, so there may be a small incremental portion
Exactly.
that is coming out of the pension fund, but generally speaking, a portion of that 3-point-something million dollars was, but I guess what you and I keep on having the same question, and maybe it goes to Mr. Moore. Why, if this was voted in November, is it not included in our current financial reports?
Yes, I can answer that. So
Thank you.
with the contemplation of the Highland Beach, that was, we were contemplating doing a mid-year adjustment to bring that before the city commission.
We're at the mid-year. We've passed the
Yeah,
mid-year.
we will be bringing that forward.
Okay.
Precisely.
Mr. Moore, the last time I sat here, this was one of my biggest concerns. We are not moving the money in a timely fashion. So when we are getting these reports, they're not accurate for us. A $3.7 million difference is pretty substantial. And I just would like these adjustments to happen more quickly than they are, so that when I'm looking at the report, I'm looking at something that's accurate.
You have a very valid point. And
Thank you.
Yeah, we agree.
And if that can cut to the chase, that's exactly the direction in which we're contemplating. It was a little bit goofy for the reasons you've stated, a la the authorization of the IAFF collective bargaining agreement and the timing that it did. So as far as the respective adjustments, we anticipate making respective recommendations in June, so that we can honor that obligation, so that we can be as thorough as necessary to support your point. So very valid suggestion, very valid argument, and therefore that's consistent with the direction being offered.
Right, because we're practically 7 months away from the date that occurred, and it hasn't been on our financials.
And it is moving forward.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Another quick question. On the third income statement, the detailed statement, 125 building permits, we were down 35% in that department, which we anticipate 11 million in revenues, and we were at 4.5. Is there something unique or unusual about that? Is it the types of permits? Are we not processing them quickly enough? Is there a reason, or maybe that's not a question for you, and I should withhold that question?
It may be activity-based, but we collected 4.5 last year at this time versus 4.1 million. And it could be a confluence of factors, construction activity, but I might be able to defer to our development service. But I think it may be activity-based driven.
Okay.
The construction activity, things of that nature, dollar value of permits and so forth. So it could be a confluence of factor that.
Excellent. And if I just could point my fellow commissioners and mayor to one item of concern, and I have been emailing Mr. Moore and Mr. Dunkley on this. When we got the Johnson-Jackson report, it identified, and I adore the gentleman in the fire department, but administratively speaking, there was a reference to excessive overtime. And if you look at the overtime, so I wrote to the gentleman to find out what is our overtime to date. We budgeted for 2.17 million, and we are at the halfway mark utilizing over 2 million. So there will also need to be additional funds in this budget going forward for that, just so people have it on their mind that this information we have is not actually what is happening right in this moment. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Precisely,
Mr. Dunkley.
Vice Mayor. Very solid points. We'll
Thank you
take
so
that
much.
into
I appreciate that.
Commissioner Long. Commissioner Markert.
I'm good.
I've got several things, of course. In looking at your list of the enterprise funds, I know we have other enterprise funds too. So if you could
Exactly.
also provide to us that list, you don't have to be right this second, but in writing to provide us, because I know Parks and Recs has an enterprise. There are several enterprise funds here. In order for me to understand the budget and where money is, I really have to know where all the funds are.
Precisely,
So-
for the sake of time, but I will definitely send those to you.
Right, because I mean, that's all funds that we're using for, when we don't know whether or not one of those could be used instead of in the general fund and properly allocated. That would be the first thing. Secondly, and by the way, the overtime I think is actually more overtime than the 100,000 you said. I think it's closer to $300,000 or $400,000 in overtime that has been used in the first 6 months, and so we have technically no more overtime budget left.
Correct. You're
So,
right.
and that's what relates to fire.
Yes.
The question, well, there are two things. In the building fund, we don't have to have that discussion here, but, having been on that side, oftentimes dealing with this commission, in terms of, paying these permit fees, I mean, there's a lot of fees getting paid into the building department, but then the building department turns around and utilizes the services of other departments. We should be really trying to allocate those funds, because I know, for example, they'll call engineering, or they'll call development services, or they'll call those to get sign-offs. That all takes time. So, I mean, to truly reflect the value of that permit, I do think we need to start that process.
Mayor, you're a clairvoyant. Matter of fact, I believe an item will be coming before you for a building fee study, and the manager may correct.
Oh, good, good.
We have one forthcoming for exactly that purpose. We'll be-
That is affirmative.
I didn't know I was clairvoyant, but that's good.
Sometimes I actually am as well.
Oh, there you go. There you go. I have a question on this $571,000 worth of adjustments that were made. I remember when the issue was with respect to the water meters, and there was faulty water meters, and the commission then agreed to pay, to essentially not bill the people and to eat those costs. I don't see anywhere where we've discussed giving credit adjustments of $571,000.
Yes, and so initially when we sent out the bills in December, some of the bills were extraordinary, which were understandable. And so what happened at that point, we had only read a segment of we had at that point about 8,000 or thereabout malfunctioned in Coder. We had only read a percentage of those. As we started to ramp up the manual reads, more and more extraordinary bills came about. And so that was what resulted in the increase. And so we felt it was advisable to bring it before the commission to kind of report to you the total adjustments year to date.
I guess my point was, shouldn't it's kind of the cart before the horse, shouldn't the question of issuing the adjustments of $500,000 and change come actually before the adjustments were made?
Well, what had happened was that the bills that were generated in December was a result of the manual reads. We were given the directive to not perform any more estimates. As we followed that directive, that generated extraordinary bills. And so the actual reads, the actual physical manual reads.
I'm not questioning whether or not they
Yeah.
were, whether they should have been the adjustment. I'm just saying that's a big number that I think that it probably, I would have liked to have seen it. I mean, and said, yeah, that's a great idea before it was done.
As a matter of fact, we felt kind of, we should have brought this a bit earlier, but what we've been doing is that we've been trying to work with the external vendor to rectify the issue. However, the major crux of the issue was that we were estimating, and then as we went out to do the manual reads, we figured out that, oops, the estimates were.
Yeah, as I said, I'm not questioning whether or not they were. I'm just, it's the timing of the
No,
thing.
it could have been.
Mr. Mayor, that's a fair observation.
Yeah, it's
so
a fair observation. It could have been a little bit. We should have brought it to you much sooner.
That's what I do, because I'm kind of like Commissioner Casal on this. I like all the numbers to really be reflected and have an understanding of how they kind of develop.
Precisely.
You had a follow-up?
I had this, between all the discussions that we've had, there's some big concerns out here. The fact that you maybe are still estimating, are you still estimating when we were told we weren't estimating anymore?
Good question. So, Vice Mayor, we have decreased the estimate significantly.
But you were still then estimating when Mr. Moore told us we were no longer estimating?
So what has happened is we have tried to ramp up the manpower to do manual reads, and we have 8,000 encoders that were malfunctioning, which we were working with the external supplier to repair those. As we were doing so, we were also trying to use staff to minimize.
So we've moved the budget, the billing now over to utilities.
Exactly, to beef up the manpower.
Is it accurate to say that some of the work that was being done by staff should have been supported financially from other departments, but was being paid for by the utility fund? Is that an accurate statement?
No, the utility funds.
I don't know if I misunderstood something that I
Yeah,
heard.
so the utility funds, they were, we had 3 meter readers, and so the utility fund was, the meter readers are charged to the utility funds.
Right.
And we have had supplemental.
So can I just cut to the chase? And I
Yes.
really appreciate and respect you. But Mr. Moore, you're really in charge here. So I'm directing this to you. As we sit here today, what we know is that we were given misinformation with respect to whether or not there was still estimated reading going on. I'm really concerned about this whole situation. I've asked questions to the city attorney that make me concerned about what actually transpired and what we're doing. And I'm just wondering if my fellow commissioners feel perhaps an audit is in order of this situation so that we can put it to bed. Because I don't like feeling concerned about what's going on and not knowing and then having partial or perhaps even inaccurate information. It's no disrespect, but we serve the residents, and financial accountability is critically important to me. As you know, Mr. Dunkley, Mr. Hajimari, Ms. Gellin, and Mr. Moore, and my fellow commissioners. So if we are in agreement, I would like to see if Attorney Gellin could contract with Julia, who's worked for us in the past, or a single individual to come in and look at this situation, and not to look for your fault or anyone's fault, but to look for creating a corrective action so this does not happen again. And I appreciate that there was some malfunction in the equipment, but I think we're in a particularly strange situation here because I don't feel like I 100% understand what's going on, and I don't like that. Anybody?
So was there your thoughts on that?
I don't have an issue with that. The only thing that I was going to add to this is that, and you don't have to do it tonight, but I think at some point the commission has to vote on approving these credits because it's clearly outside of the manager's spending authority. And I reviewed the January 4th meeting, and I don't believe there was authority for it. So I don't think you have to do it tonight, because I do think you should have all the information before you.
Right.
But I also feel that time is of the essence because it's been done, and I think that the commission has to rectify that.
Well, if you could put together a memo and we can vote on that the next meeting.
Yes, sir. So what I would like to do, given the direction, so we're supportive in that regard and we'll make appropriate arrangements. Nevertheless, for the May 21st regular meeting, we'll create an agenda item for that respective approval to be square in that regard.
And just, and generally, as I said, I'm not questioning whether or not the adjustments were correct. I'm suggesting that it's something that we should have, just as we did before with the payment of the overages to the others, that the commission had it in front of them, they said, go ahead and do it.
Yes, that would be part of the package prospectively as well.
Great, okay.
Are we amenable to auditing the situation so we understand it, find out what's going on, get some feedback as to how to prevent something like this in the future?
How would we do that?
Through our auditor, Julia, she's done this before.
Is that something?
It's Dr. David Ian.
Oh, pardon me, I apologize.
It's okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to be candid. I don't know if she would. She's a college professor now, so I don't know if she has the ability to do it. We can reach out to local auditors. There's independent auditors that reside in the county, and we can reach out to them and ask for. I would bring it back before.
I was going to say a couple weeks isn't going to make a difference, but if you could also on the next meeting
Sure.
have some thoughts for us on how we could proceed if we wanted to proceed up that way and what our options might be.
Okay,
You know, how detailed or how, scope of work, et cetera, et cetera.
that's fine. I think I
Is
said
that
3
satisfactory?
months.
That's satisfactory. Thank you
Yes.
so much. I appreciate
Great.
that consideration. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much for the presentation.
You're much welcome.
Budget's going to be fun.
It is going to be fun.
All right, comments and inquiries on agenda and non-agenda items from the public. The first is the city manager's comments and responses to prior public comment.
Not at this time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Okay, then we have, do I have an announcement to make all the? Okay, the meeting is now open to public comment from anyone wishing to speak on any topic or agenda item other than quasi-judicial items and public hearing items. The public will have an opportunity to speak on quasi-judicial and public hearing items later in the meeting as those items are called. For public comment, please make sure that you've signed in and with your name and address, and you will each have 3 minutes.
Do we
You're-
speak now?
You're on.
The clock is on. Ooh-hoo. Hi, I'm Jane Fields. I live at 319 Southeast 7th Avenue, and this is another neighbor.
Hi there, my name is Susan Baltris. I live at 53 Southeast 7th Avenue.
And we're here today, even though it's not on the agenda, to just bring to the commission's attention about this new code that has been passed, I guess, in the fall of 2023 regarding artificial turf. And so a couple weeks ago, many residents were just hit with surprise notices about this code change and that it's no longer going to be allowed in the front yards. And speaking for myself, I installed this artificial turf in a small portion of my front yard in 2021 when it was totally fine. There was no problem with it. There was no code saying you couldn't do this. I ripped out all my sprinkler system and just put this stuff in. So, to now have to take this out is going to be a big job. And frankly, I don't want to do it because I like it. And there's been a lot of research, which Susan will go into in a moment, basically for the environment, confirming that it's actually much more beneficial to the environment than regular grass. So from a cosmetic standpoint, we believe we can prove that it's it's cosmetic, so it's really a personal choice. But, that's America. Supposedly, we still have choice, so we can decide what each of us like. We don't live in a closed community. We're not in a homeowners association. But at any rate, I just don't feel that it's fair to ask people to take out something when a code is changed when it was code compliant previously. So I think that, if you want to change the code going forward for whatever your reasons, that's something, another discussion. But, to make people change something that was fine before just because somebody decides they don't like it, I think isn't fair. But Susan's going to talk now about the environmental reasons to not change this anyway.
You have 45 seconds.
Oh, sorry.
I don't count as another person. Anyway,
I'll give you some leeway.
Okay, thank
You
you.
made a good point, a technical point, and I am a lawyer, so I have to give you some.
So there's two issues here. One is the one that Jane mentioned, which is people who had turf in already shouldn't have to go change it because a new ordinance was passed. The second issue, the one that I question, is why was the ordinance changed to begin with? It seems that there's this misconception that artificial turf is bad for the environment, and there is actually well-documented research from scientific journals that it is not bad for it, and some people believe it is more beneficial than grass. And I actually emailed this fact sheet to the commissioners over the weekend.
You're on 7th Avenue, Southeast 7th, right?
Yeah.
I got you. I read it.
Yeah. And I'll just summarize briefly since the clock is ticking. But the main, one reason that artificial turf is better than grass is because you don't have to water it, so we all have reduced water use. The second reason is we're not using fertilizers and pesticides, so animals and insects can burrow underneath the turf. The third one is no mowing, and the EPA has actually said that communities really need to work to protect the public from gas-powered mowers because they are so detrimental to the environment. The recycling potential, most artificial turf is made from recycled materials, and when it's done, it can also be recycled. And health concerns. The health concerns have been studied. In the past, it was made with things that were harmful to our health. However, current artificial turf is no longer uses those things. So the bottom line, I'll just quote from one scientific journal: synthetic grass has environmental impacts in line with those of natural grass, and in some cases even better. So why was this ordinance even changed to begin with? We love the artificial turf. It looks good. It's not bad for the environment. And we would like the ordinance to go back to the way it used to be.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Thanks. And I have copies of this if you would like.
You have to give it to the clerk, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing up the budget concerns. I appreciate that. And just a quick, can I ask another quick question? Did we have that many fires? Is that why we're so over budget with the fire department with the overtime? I'm just wondering whether it's that many fires that happened, or why are we so over budget?
I don't have the details of
Okay,
the
all right,
overtime
just something to
expense.
think about. Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bruce Leash. I'm the president of the Meridian Delray Condo Association on 6th Avenue. I'm also a landscape architect and a city planner. And I have some concerns about the Lowson Boulevard project that I'd like to raise. I know there have been some concerns about the quality of the paving and so forth, but I have different issues. I just think the whole project, the design of the project, is a huge disappointment. And I understand that the goals were roadway reconstruction and putting a bike path on either side of the road, instead of just a sidewalk. These are extremely wide sidewalks. They're 9 feet or 10 feet wide. And it appears that little, if any, thought was given to the visual quality of the project and the streetscape. These bike paths are much wider than necessary, and they're on both sides of the road. They're 9 to 10 feet wide. There are no plantings of any kind throughout the entire quarter. I should say there are 2 trees next to a bus stop that was put in there. It's just very bleak. It's very hot. There's no shade. We're contributing to heating up of the environment. And in one stretch, the width of the project consists of a 9-foot wide sidewalk, 4 lanes of asphalt, a 14-foot wide concrete island, 20-foot driving aisle, head-in parking, and then another sidewalk. It's just north of Congress, and it's that curved section. That's 120 feet of pavement directly across with no relief. To say that it's a lost opportunity is an understatement. In other places, there are tiny triangles of unmaintainable grass. I won't go into all of the observations that I've made, but I respectfully request that a phase 2 study be done and money possibly budgeted for tree plantings where possible, and hopefully retrofitting of some of the most barren areas. I think we could actually remove some of the paving and still have it function perfectly. I'd be happy to walk the site with the city landscape architect, or any of the commissioners, walk or drive or bike. I just feel, in summary, this is an underserved industrial and residential neighborhood that simply does not meet the visual quality standards of all of the other boulevards in town. And I hope you'll consider a retrofit of some kind. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Paul Cannon, 1021 East Heritage Club. A couple of things I'd like to say. First of all, I'm going to give a shout out to Max Gage for the magnificent Concourse d'Elegance event that he put on a few weeks ago. Max is one of our upcoming leaders, and I think all due recognition should be given to him for that. The second thing concerns the discussions that have been going for some time about designating the Atlantic Avenue corridor as a historic district, and I understand that plans may be put on the shelf for that. I think everybody's aware that there is an overwhelming demand from the residents that Atlantic Avenue is kept and maintains its charm, so let's not lose that opportunity. And on the same vein, we're seeing some developments in some of the historic neighborhoods, not that I have a formal designation, but I live very close to Osceola Park. And we're seeing, some of the charming cottages being torn down and replaced with what I would only describe as blocky concrete houses, and it really is destroying the aesthetic of the neighborhood. So can we please be a bit more aware of the very thing that draws people into the city and not destroy it for the sake of a few modern developers. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for your input.
Michael Wendell, Ray Beach. I was going to talk something else, but I'm going to skip you people because there's nothing interesting for me to say. So I'm just going to talk about myself. Okay? I was born in Siberia, in Russia. My father was prisoner of war. So I've seen much evil in my life as a child. I grew up in Ukraine where everybody hates the Jews. I'm Jewish. I'm proud to be a Jew. No, I can't touch it. Came to Delray Beach to take care of my mother. She was dying. She died. I kept her alive for 6 years, 4 years with a teaspoon, because the healthcare in Delray Beach, Palm Beach County, is the worst in the United States. The hospice is the worst. So I took care of her myself. I went to Nassau College together with same college as Ron DeSantis. I tried to help him win the election. He lost. But I was featured on his engagement list. The top score was 250. I was featured at 750 engagements in 7 months. I'm a powerhouse on social media. I'm personal friends with Elon Musk. He's going to watch this. I'm going to show it to him because I told him I want to show him the town. This is our town. So he can see it because he told me he's going to come here. So I want him to see it. Maybe he'll open an office here because that was originally my goal when I decided to put Delray Beach on the map of the world. I did that, not Missy. I did that, 100%, okay? As a matter of fact, I wanted to know from the police chief if I want to file charges, do I file with you or FBI? I'll file with FBI, I'm good with them. When I came into Delray Beach, I trained FBI agents right here in town. I didn't like it because the traffic is a little bit wild. After Nassau College, I went to Adelphi University because I got injured. I was blind, but I survived, and I got eyesight back. I'm going blind now. I'm always on the internet. And of course, this town, they made a deal like I'm the crazy one and they normal. But half of them are criminals. I reported it one guy to Sam. He didn't do nothing. He told me he didn't do nothing. A violation, code code compliance violations. He did not do nothing. He's supposed to be good.
You're going to need to wrap this up. Your 3 minutes
It's
are
okay.
up. Because the others are in line. Otherwise, I would be more lenient.
What is it? I'm done?
Well, yes, sir. It's 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. But I'm sure we'll see you again.
Well, all right.
Take that as a lesson, Missy.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Esteemed mayor, our city commissioners, our city officials, leaders, and fellow residents of Delray Beach. I'm truly honored and grateful to accept the 2024 proclamation declaring this month as Mental Health Awareness and Trauma-Informed Care Month in our beloved All-America City.
Excuse me, Ms. Kenya.
Yes.
Introduce yourself formally, your name.
Oh, certainly. Let me start over. Good day. I am Kenya Madison, and I reside at 301 Northwest 7th Avenue. I forgot that we're supposed to do that for the record, and I apologize. So I will just kind of back it on up and simply say that I am still, and very much so, truly honored and grateful to accept the 2024 proclamation declaring this month as Mental Health Awareness and Trauma-Informed Care Month in our beloved All-America City. The Get Your Green On campaign, now Palm Beach County's, and growing on to become Florida's and the world's largest mental health awareness platform, was founded in 2016 by students at Atlantic High School and community leaders through Healthier Delray Beach's community engagement. As the HDB Senior Director, I want to express my deepest appreciation to the City of Delray for your continued and consistent commitment to recognizing the importance of visible mental health supports and trauma-informed care in our community. Thank you for turning this beautiful building green during the month of May and shining a spotlight on the crucial issues we are taking a significant step towards creating a healthier and more resilient Delray Beach. I am also incredibly thankful for the efforts of Healthier Delray Beach and the Get Your Green On campaign to promote behavioral health initiatives and raising awareness about mental health awareness and trauma-informed care. The initiative's dedication to commitment through HDB's resident leaders and my humble directorship have had an undeniable positive impact on the lives of Delray Beach residents, providing valuable resources and support for those in need. Together, we can continue to work towards breaking the stigma surrounding mental health, supporting those who are struggling, and creating a more compassionate and understanding community. My call to action is to let's please continue to stand together in solidarity, spreading awareness and fostering a culture of care and empathy towards those facing mental health challenges in our city and beyond. Thank you once again for the proclamation and for your ongoing support of mental health initiatives in Delray Beach. Let us steadily strive towards the collective community healing and creating a more healthier, resilient Delray Beach. And again, thank you. My call to action is go get your green on, and please join us May 31st at Old School Square for the Multicultural Youth Art Festival from 4 to 8 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your very positive
And
work in the city.
May I please gift you guys with pineapple stress balls? I'm sure you need them. I have enough for everybody.
Miss Kenya Madison, I received mine in advance when I bumped into you last Thursday, so thank you for that.
We had the ethics board here a couple of weeks ago. It's not worth more than $100. He's right. We're not allowed to accept them otherwise.
No, you're fine.
Thank you very much for your hard work.
Kenya. Sorry. Hi, my name is Sylvia Dreyfus, and I'm CEO. Yeah, it's the moment. CEO of Mission Possible Foundation, a Delray Beach charity, and she's helping me open the banner. 5 years ago, on May 31st, and I brought a copy, I've got like proclamations plenty, but this was issued to our organization. We do a music-based smoking vaping prevention initiative, and what started here 5 years ago on May 31st happens to be World No Tobacco Day. And as it turns out, I collaborate with Anthony Backus we do Drum Unto Others. We have the 120 drums. And so the event that's scheduled to happen that Ms. Kenya just mentioned happens to be on May 31st. And I see Ron Allen. We did an event last year in Riviera Beach on May 28th because that's what the Sunday before World No Tobacco Day. So I inquired to the city to get a proclamation for this year and was told that they're doing things a bit differently and that they issue the proclamations at once. They've already decided what they are, but I could come to tonight's meeting. I think just before I left here, I had an emergency, so I was running late, so I sent each one of you, just for reference, I didn't expect you to see it before this evening, but just for reference, you'll see the video in the mayor's chambers of that event happening May 31st, 5 years ago. We've done a lot of things and have accomplished a lot. Our contest is run through the Palm Beach County Behavioral Health Coalition in partnership with the School District of Palm Beach County, MAD, SAD, Rotary, Sheriff's Department, and so forth. And I had Kenya's, if I hold on this side and you hold on this side just to show it's easier. See, I've got 1 minute. Every logo that's here is just an expression. Collecting around. I was just going to say that we do engage kids in peace projects, and peace is an acronym for us, for philanthropy, education, advocacy, cultural and healing arts, and entrepreneurship. So if you just glance at the logos underneath, those are all Mission Possible initiatives that touch on all the above. But the subject is always the same. We're dealing with prevention of youth substance use in creative ways. So I'm seeking a proclamation for Jam for Humanity Day, and it helps honor those kids. We've had over 45 submissions in last year's contest, and it marks, we seek a day in May, and I'm requesting that it be Delray, since we're going to be participating in Delray on May 31st. So,
thank you. You will
20
look into that
seconds.
to see whether...
Thank you so much, Kenya.
So if there's an interest on part of the commission to evaluate that particular request in consideration, we will do so, and likewise offer an opportunity for a proclamation consideration sometime in June.
Great.
Well, okay. The proclamation was specific.
I apologize. Because the event is in May, that's something we can facilitate.
That's why I was saying, yeah, it's just May 31st, but you'll see it in the email, and you can get back to me, and if at all possible.
If you can forward me an email, I'll have you,
Terrence
Moore, City
yes,
Manager,
I'll share
easy to find.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
More at mydelraybeach.com.
Yeah, that.
Commissioner Katz.
Good evening, Commissioner, Mayors. Thank you. Mitch Katz, 1618 West Classical Boulevard. Happy to be here. It's funny, the last two speakers, if I could have planned in time that knew they were going to be here, it's perfect for what I want to talk about. I want to give a little background. We had our two school board members here to accept a grant. And it was mentioned it was from the Karen Foundation. And I would bet you, except for one of you, probably don't even know who the Karen Foundation is potentially, or definitely doesn't know why we're getting a grant from the Karen Foundation. So just to give you a brief history, there was a lawsuit. The Karen Foundation is a drug rehabilitation organization. They built 2 rehabilitation homes right on Ocean Boulevard. The city sued them. Part of the settlement was they were going to give in perpetuity 2 things. They were going to give, it's around $50,000, the taxable money they would have gotten because they're nonprofits, so they don't pay taxes. They would give that money to the city, it goes in the general fund. And then they would provide mental health and drug counseling training through an organization they owned at the time called the Hanley Center. When I was on the commission, one of my first meetings, that agreement was changed because the Karen divested themselves of Hanley, and they had to come another way to provide that to fulfill their obligation in a federal lawsuit. So they asked the commission, and we approved it. They amended the federal lawsuit to provide that. It's about $35,000 to the city so that we would use that money for mental health and substance abuse. As a matter of fact, in the federal agreement, what it says, and I quote, is Karen on an annual basis will pay the city an annual basis on and before March 31st each year. And I'll skip to provide substance abuse training and education to organizations, including but not limited to schools, churches, or other charitable institutions. Things like what they're doing, what you just heard about, that's who this money should be going to, doing that work for the children that live in this community. Because it was this community that was affected by these rehabs being built here. That's why the settlement was they would give the money to the city, and then our children here would get that training. Yet we're giving it to schools that have choice programs that are already getting, as was mentioned tonight, 1/3 of our tax dollars, right? And now they're getting this money on top of that that was said to be used for ESSER funds. And if you're familiar, ESSER funds was come up during the pandemic for reading coaches and things like that, and that's what you were told the money's being used for. I went and dug, I'm like, well, what are the grants are? I found on the October Education Board meeting the actual grant applications, and I printed a few out, and I'm just going to give you a couple examples from those grants. We're paying for hundreds of Starbucks gift cards. We are providing pizza parties, ice cream parties for behavior initiatives. We are funding a robotics program for the ROTC. I don't know how those things fulfill the obligation that was in this federal grant. There's a lot more history to it, so I'm going to let Janet Meeks continue since I've used up my 3 minutes. But thank you for your time. Thanks for what you do, and appreciate it.
Good evening. It's good to see all of you. My name is Janet Meeks. I live at 2782 Hampton Circle South, and I'm the former education coordinator. I am here tonight to express my disappointment about how the Caron Foundation grant money is being spent, which is generally not on substance abuse and mental health services. During my tenure at the city, the Caron Foundation money was contentious. The grant was put on hold after it was thought there was mismanagement of the funds being granted to nonprofits. The funding accumulated over the years, and when I left, there was around $120,000 in the budget. At their time, there was a large turnover of upper management with lack of understanding of the lawsuit and an antiquated city grant policy. In fact, I was working with Suzanne Fisher on policy GA23 for charitable and benevolent contributions and special events to create a new formal grant procedure and process. I made suggested changes, however, they do not appear to have been approved, as I see this antiquated policy is still located in the HR administration policies under the city manager. I had suggested to the city manager prior to retiring that the city create an RFP to hire an education firm to provide the substance abuse training and education at our local schools and community and roll it out under a 2-year grant cycle with several programs at different age groups. After the 2 years, the city could evaluate the programs and determine which program showed the best results and outcomes. The accumulated money would then be spent down in the first 2 years. Then the annual sum of approximately $37,000 would support that program with the best results and outcomes moving forward. Therefore, my questions are, is there an approved grant policy and procedure for the city to give away money? Was the process and grants vetted by the Education Board? Is this an annual grant process or a one and done? Were the grants tied to specific outcomes, and were the schools required to provide a final report to the city? Were our nonprofits allowed to apply for the grants, and how was it advertised? So that is my biggest concern. And as a separate note, I'd like to remind the City Commission, as Commissioner Cassell said, is 34% of our taxes go to the school district. The city should not be giving our taxpayers' money to the school district, as we already pay our fair share, and that is double dipping. The city dollars should be spent filling in the gaps. That's when the school day ends, on the weekends, after school, and interventions in the summer to benefit our youth and our community. I encourage the City Commission to move forward with the education workshop that was suggested from the former commission between the Ed Board and City Commission. It would be to discuss what outcomes you as commissioners want to see for education in our community and to set policy and direction. When I retired, the data showed that over 50% of our students were not career and college ready. That is the reason why my job description was changed. It was to connect economic development with education for talent development and to create an educated workforce to bring in more businesses. Using the information found in the comprehensive plan, education economic elements, current data, and your education policy and direction, it can inform an education plan for budgetary consideration and implementation that includes timetables to hold people and agencies accountable. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Irene Revelis, and I live at 331 East Atlantic Avenue, and I'm a 20-year resident of Delray Beach. I'm following up with what Mr. Katz has presented to you, as well as Ms. Meeks. I'm in full support of all the information that they shared, and I'm going to give you a little bit more of the financial information. My ask of you all this evening is that the Commission not give a penny of Caron Foundation money that comes from a court-ordered settlement. These are restricted funds, and they shouldn't be touched, let alone granted to the school district prior to someone in the city doing an audit of the funds. When you analyze, just on a very cursory basis, the settlement agreement itself, it started in 2014. It continues, as Mitch said, into perpetuity. So it had 2 years where we got $57,000 one year and $59,000 the next year. Then when you go to the third year, that's when the Hamley Center closed and the agreement was amended. So these monies are not city general funds. They are court-ordered restricted funds for specific purposes. And both in the primary lawsuit and in the follow-up settlement agreement that amended the original court order, it was very clear for the purposes for which they were to be used. Not necessarily ice cream and Starbucks cards. So if I do a quick calculation of the monies from 2014 that should have been coming in, there's a fixed amount that is tied to an estimation of what the residences would be paying in school taxes, and that's fixed at $30,500. Then there's a variable amount that was part of the original agreement, which represents the portion of the ad valorem tax assessed to those two A1A residences. So the amended settlement agreement added those two amounts together. So if I take those two amounts with what already came in, we should be seeing around $669,500 from 14 till now in Caron Foundation money pursuant to the court-ordered settlement. What confuses me is a few years ago, we were showing a balance of, as Ms. Meek said, about $120,000. Last year it showed about $140,000. This year in Mr. Dunkley's financials, I'm going to take a wild guess, maybe Mr. Dunkley can help out. There is a line item on page 7 of 93 in the income statements under miscellaneous revenues, number 369060. It says Caron House pilot, period, between each letter. I'm assuming pilot means payment in lieu of taxes. So I believe before a penny of this money is touched, we need to have a clear understanding internally what came in. I believe that we may have had a period during all the city turnover that Caron wasn't even invoiced for monies under the settlement. So I think the city would be remiss and fiscally irresponsible if we did not understand the history of that grant, where we are with it financially, and then revisit moving forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Is there any more public comment? Seeing none. Oh, wait. I didn't see you getting up there.
George Long, 46 North Swinton Avenue. I see your blue flags up there. I saw two this morning in the back of a SUV at the beach. Good production, a good scene for Delray. It had to do with politics. I couldn't read it exactly because the wind was blowing, but it told me what I could do with my feelings if I didn't agree with whoever their hero was. And it was in the American English vernacular. And my point is, I don't know if we can do anything about this because that's what some people thrive on. But is there an ordinance or anything about profane, obscene signs on a public road? If there's not, I think we should have one that we have no obscenities east of the center line of A1A because it's bad for our blue flag presentation on the beach. Thank you.
I know we can do hate speech, but bad manners, I don't know that we can regulate. Poor taste. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. As you know, we've had certain items pulled from the consent agenda. Those were items, what, 6?
Do you want to approve the consent agenda first because they were moved to regular?
Okay, so why don't we, okay. Well, that's what I was doing. I was saying consent, less those items which had been moved to the other, but we'll do it your way.
Motion to approve consent agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Great. Okay. We are now going to 7. What was it? 7AA?
Yes. 6F.
Yes, sir.
Formerly 6F.
Formerly 6F.
All these proclamations I gotta sign. Okay. Okay. So the first one was formerly 6F.
Right.
Right?
Yes, sir.
And
I apologize, Mr. Dunkley, because that's putting him on the hot seat tonight. And
No,
it's
not a problem at all.
It's actually to the city manager. I pulled this item because if you look at the agenda cover sheet on this item, which is this item is a resolution to amend the fiscal year budget. So it's budget amendments. And when you review the agenda cover sheet, there is it says under Neighborhood and Community Services, $3,273,625.75 are being moved into our current budget, carried over from our prior budget. Right, and so my point that I've been trying to make this evening, and I guess I'm just doing it, I'm being a little redundant, is that that's 7 months ago. So the point is that money shouldn't be sitting from last year's budget. We've had 3 financial reports since, right? The closing of the last financial fiscal period. We had our first quarterly report, and now we're processing our second quarterly report, going into our halfway through our third quarter. And this $3.273625 million is still sitting as if it's part of our last budget.
So this one in particular it pertains to grant funds, which we try to do it around this time of the year to approximate the actual closing balance of that fund. It's Fund 118 is separate and distinct from the general fund. It's primarily grant driven, and those primarily represent carryover of prior years' purchase
Right.
orders and what have you.
And as I explained to you earlier, I feel like that money should be carried over more quickly, so when we're reviewing our financials, they'll look different. It's not a small amount of money, it's a pretty substantial amount of money.
We just concluded the budget, the actual, bear with me, the annual comprehensive financial was just issued.
7 months after the close?
Yes, that is, the state gives us a time frame.
We're given until April 30th of each year. That is correct, Mr. Dunkley. So it coincides with that timeline, does it not?
Yeah, actually, the state law gives you 9 months within which to complete your financials. Ours was issued on the 30th of April, roughly a few week or so ago. And so this is primarily by design. It's to try and approximate the amount in those funds, which are donor-imposed funds.
Right.
They're grant-restricted funds. And in the financials, you'll see those as being restricted as
Right.
to purpose. And this is done each year. This has been the practice from the past. We have done a mid-year, which is what is being brought before you today.
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm trying to say is I feel this stuff, we should try to get this done. The state may allow you 7 months to close out your fiscal year, but how can we do that without, it makes our information that we're currently working with not as accurate as it could be.
Madam Vice Mayor, as I committed a little while ago in response to the previous analysis, we will take that in consideration and
I
do the
appreciate
best we
that.
can to make it faster. Again, I think we're fine, we're compliant in that regard. However, I'm taking this as guidance from the dais in terms of performance expectations, and from that standpoint, we will work to achieve accordingly. So the Office of the City Manager will work closely with the Department of Finance in response to all opportunities to be as timely as we possibly can be. Fair
We'll
enough.
make it- we'll I make it appreciate
Mr. Dunkley, we got
Mr. Dunkley, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
we'll make it work.
I apologize for putting you on the
Yeah.
hot seat for the
That
evening.
is not a problem at
And I
all.
appreciate that you will do this. Thank you so much.
Nothing wrong with having timely financials.
And I support that observation once again, and this includes this particular consideration. So a few adjustments to get to that place, and I think we can accomplish that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the second
I would
item.
like to make a motion to approve item
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
6F, which was moved to 7AA, resolution number 6524, amending the fiscal year 2023-24 budget adopted by resolution number 145-23 on September 18th, 2023.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, passed unanimous. All right, the next item is formerly
6C.
6C, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And it's 7A,
7BB.
7VB. Gotcha. You're on, Commissioner.
Well, I just wanted to pull this item in hopes that some of the family member of the
Reverend Thomas?
Yes, Reverend Thomas were being here and wanted to make comment, but I don't think there's anyone here. No.
I need a motion to approve the
Okay,
resolution.
so I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 11524.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Now, the last one is the one I pulled, which is going to require, say, 60, where was I? 6001?
601.
601. Page.
They're already up the bat. There we
13.
go. Just wanted something, only because the expense is so large. I don't like to, $2 million plus things. I don't like to just go through consent. I like at least everybody to understand where the money is going. So that's all.
This contract will provide owner's representative services for the construction of the Pompey Park facilities. In general, that facility is costing the city around $44 million. Industry standard is that the owner's representative services would be about 10% of that cost. So we've negotiated a good deal for the city here at this lower amount of just under $2.7 million. This contract is comprised of engineers and construction management professionals who will be on site every day during the construction of the facility to ensure that all of the quality materials, the plans are followed. As we've discussed on Friday at goal setting, this facility will remain open to the public during construction, and these folks will also be responsible for coordinating that to make sure that the general public is safe at all times while the construction and the activities at the community center are happening side by side.
Thank you very much for the explanation. Anyone on the commission, any comments? I need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve resolution number 97-24.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? It's passed. Okay. Thank you very much, both of you. Well done, Sam. All right, now we are going to 7A. Okay.
Mayor, do you want me to read these resolutions into the record?
Would you please?
Sure. Resolution number 12-24, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Delray Beach, Florida, approving a waiver request of section 4.4.13 I3B1 of the Land Development Regulations, approving vehicular access from a primary street, whereas the alley should be the primary source of vehicular access to off-street parking for the property located at 605 Northeast 2nd Street, as more particularly described herein, providing an effective date and for other purposes. And this is a quasi-judicial proceeding, Mayor.
Thank you. You ready to?
Do you want to read the rules first?
Oh, sure. The rules. This is a quasi-judicial hearing. This hearing will be conducted in accordance with the quasi-judicial rules. The applicant and the city shall be allowed 15 minutes each to present their case. The public will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes each, or a maximum of 6 minutes if the person represents an organization or a group of people who are present but agree not to speak. The city commission and staff and the applicant may be allowed to cross-examine a witness. The city or the applicant will be allowed to offer rebuttal testimony. The decision to approve or deny an application or appeal may not be legally made upon the personal views as to whether a project is a good project or not, nor may a decision be based on the numbers of citizens who support or oppose a particular project. The law requires that all decisions must be made on the basis of whether the project meets the requirements of law, the comprehensive plan, and the land development regulations. Okay. You're on. Do we need to swear in? Do I use swear in?
The clerk will.
Oh, yes, right. Okay, yeah. Anybody that wishes to testify or speak on this matter, please stand and raise your hand and be sworn by the clerk.
By the authority vested in me as a notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you. Ms.
Mayor.
Gianotis, if you could enter into the file for the record.
Good evening, Anthea Gianotis, Development Services Director, and I'd like to enter file 2022-008 into the record, and the applicant is here with the presentation of their request.
Mayor, disclosure of ex parte communications.
Did anyone have any ex parte communications?
I spoke to some residents regarding the edge.
I
And
spoke
we
to a
received
couple
an
residents
email.
as
I
well.
apologize. And we received an email on the server. Pardon me, gentlemen.
And there might be something on the server I didn't see.
Yeah.
I spoke with the applicant as well as several Palm Trail HOA members during our safety audit last week.
I had a brief conversation with the applicant and a brief conversation with a representative of the Palm Trail Homeowners Association. Okay? First set. Please.
Hi, good evening. For the record, Christina Belenke. My address is 14 Southeast 4th Street in Boca Raton, Florida. It's a pleasure to be here before you this evening representing the applicant. Just to kind of put things in perspective, to give you a broad overview, the property we're speaking on today is highlighted on the screen in the pink box. It's located at the northeast corner of Northeast 6th Avenue, which is your northbound Federal Highway corridor, and Northeast 2nd Street is the intersection there. To give you kind of a closer aerial image, this is the subject property highlighted in, again, the pink box. It is about 0.36 acres in size. It is located within the Central Business District. And currently it's developed kind of with two different uses. On the west-hand side along Federal Highway, you have a restaurant. It's vacant currently. Many will probably know it as the former La Poulette. And previous to that, it was Granger's when they, prior to their relocation. On the east side of the site, you have a single-family residence. And then in the back, a little bit behind that residential building, there's a cottage and a garage for residential use as well. So here are a couple from the ground images. Again, at the top left-hand side of your screen, you have a graphic of the former restaurant use. And then as you go along to the right-hand side of your screen, you have the alley there. And along the south side, a variety of pictures of the residential structures, again, just to give you a little bit of context. Now, this evening we're probably going to be spending a good amount of time talking about the alley, since that is associated with our waiver request. So we wanted to put into perspective the existing conditions of the alley as well. So we do have different photographs. They are each numbered, and the location of where that picture was taken corresponds to kind of those camera graphics along the alley on the left-hand side of the screen. So you can match the number to the image, just again to see the viewpoint from the alley where each of those graphics were taken. If you look at that graphic on the left-hand side of the screen, there's a couple different areas that are hatched in kind of a pink line. So on the west side of the alley, that's depicting a 2-foot dedication and a corner clip dedication. That's going to be required if this project gets approved. So with the approval of the project, we would be required to dedicate 2 feet of right-of-way for that alley. On the east side, again, the property at the southern portion of the alley, you can see that cross-hatched area as well, because when they came through with their approvals for the townhomes that were ultimately constructed there, they were required to dedicate an additional 2 feet for that alley as well. So for a good portion of the alley adjacent to this specific property, there is, or will be, ultimately, 20 feet of right-of-way for the alley. That ends where you see that pink line that kind of separates the two properties on the east side, and the property to the northeast corner of the subject parcel did not yet dedicate their 2 feet. They will likely be required to dedicate 2 feet when they come through with any redevelopment plan, but at this point in time, that 2-foot dedication has not been provided. So ultimately, with the 2-foot dedication from this project, there would be an ultimate right-of-way of 18 feet. Now, in terms of how that alley is actually developed, you can see there are existing FPL poles within that current kind of alley area outside of the dedications. And there are, I believe, at least 4 poles throughout the alley adjacent to this parcel. In addition, you can see from photographs 1 and 5, there's a substantial areca hedge that is located and I believe planted by the property immediately east. That is actually planted within the alley. So should we move forward with this project, should it get approved and we are required to improve the alley, we would likely need to remove that areca hedge as well, which does provide the adjacent owner with some privacy as well. So those are just kind of, I guess, obstacles to use of the alley in its current condition, and just wanted to again make it clear that although there is 20 feet of right-of-way along a substantial portion of the alley once dedicated, the actual curbing and area that can be utilized due to those FPL poles and other constraints will likely be a little bit less. So the actual area for vehicular traffic as it sits today is quite a bit less than the 20-foot of ultimate alley right-of-way. And so now we're going to get into the proposed project. Just to give you a little bit of an overview, again, this is not for the site plan, this is just for the waiver request. But we are proposing an 8-unit townhouse building, not 8 stories.
8 stories.
Let's not scare everybody with that, right? Sorry, no, it's 3 stories with a 4th floor that has 1 bonus room with an additional setback that's kind of tucked away in the graphic. And there is, an open terrace area on the top, so you can see that green area that is spilling over as well. You can also see kind of the pedestrian streetscape. This is the view along Federal Highway, again, that northbound lane, with the plantings and the trees and kind of those frontage types prescribed by the CBD. With respect to the site plan, we really wanted to highlight kind of the layout of the proposed site plan so you can see how the access, as we're proposing it, would function. So again, you have 2 buildings with this project. So you have 4 units within each of the buildings. You have 1 building that fronts Federal Highway, and that's where you have numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then 4 units in building 2 that would front the alley. So you have 5, 6, 7, and 8 there. When we were going through this proposal, we've spent a lot of time kind of analyzing the best design, obviously, the layout, what works from a functional standpoint. And so our initial proposal came in with use of only Northeast 2nd Street for ingress and egress. That was the main access point. There was no access to or from the alley with our initial application. Some of you may recall we were here on that waiver request a couple months ago, and there was some discussion and concern from residents about the 2-way traffic. So we had agreed to take a look at the plan and come back and see if we could modify it for 1-way circulation. And ultimately, we went back to the Planning and Zoning Board as per the direction from the commission at the time, and revised the plan to reflect 1-way circulation. Initially, we actually had it circulating the other way, but heard some concerns from the Palm Trails residents about having ingress at that main driveway off Northeast 2nd Street because of the proximity to the intersection. So ultimately, my client agreed to move the ingress, so it is from the alley, but have the egress onto Northeast 2nd Street. So that's essentially what you're seeing here on the screen with the arrows. So people would most likely be coming from northbound Federal Highway or west of the site along Northeast 2nd Street. They'd travel eastbound to the alley. That would be their access point to the project. They would head northbound and then into the site. And then as they are leaving, they would go southbound to Northeast 2nd Street and most likely go west and then along Federal Highway or further west along Northeast 2nd Street. With this configuration, there are no conflicts between cars kind of exiting, because anybody exiting the project, if there's 3 or 4 cars stacked, they would have to essentially wait their turn for a space to open up where the vehicles could then exit. So this is the plan that we ultimately determined was the best, given the concerns we heard from the community and our multiple meetings with them as well. These are just to show the streetscape sections that are proposed as part of the project. Again, because this project is part of the CBD, we are required to comply with the streetscape requirements. And so here we just have those areas shown to, again, demonstrate that we are not only meeting the streetscape requirements, but often exceeding it. The code requires a 4-foot curb zone, 6-foot clear zone, and 5 foot of remaining setback. And in some instances, we have about 24 feet total instead. So significantly more than would otherwise be required. With respect to the waiver specifically, it is to provide access from a primary street, being Northeast 2nd Street, because essentially if we have an alternative being either a secondary street or an alley, we are required to provide access from that alley or secondary street. And so this graphic on the screen is from the Central Business District regulations, and it essentially highlights the central core in the kind of orange color, and the bold lines reflect the streets that are classified as primary street frontages. So the property is highlighted by the yellow star within the blue circle, and as you can see, the primary street classification essentially ends with this property. At the alley moving eastbound, there is no further classification as a primary street. And so that's just important as we move forward, because this isn't necessarily a break in a streetscape that would continue moving eastward. This is the primary street dead ends at the property. So where we would be providing, your 15 feet of streetscape adjacent to us in the property immediately east isn't required to do that. So primary streets are intended to develop over time as superior pedestrian environments and are held to higher standards. Again, I spoke already of the streetscape requirements, but we are providing the necessary street trees rather than kind of your standard 5-foot concrete sidewalk. We do have a pavered pedestrian pathway that enhances that streetscape. Again, large canopy trees, additional plantings. And then in terms of the CBD frontage types, we are also required to comply with those along Northeast 2nd Street. So we have on those end units an additional access point with an attractive entrance that meets those frontage standards. And then this is to show you the property immediately across Northeast 2nd Street. So it was approved prior to the code change, so I will make that clear. But as you can see, it does not further kind of the goals of that pedestrian-oriented streetscape design. They do have a large concrete wall. They have their plantings on the interior of that wall to provide kind of a privacy screen, and they have a 5-foot concrete sidewalk. So again, just in contrast to what we're providing, we are proposing a nice pavered pathway, the street trees, an open environment, really enhancing that pedestrian streetscape. And at this point, I'm going to pass it over to our transportation engineer.
Good evening. For the record, Chris Hagan, I'm a transportation engineer with Kimley Horn Associates. My office address is 477 South Rosemary Avenue, Suite 215 in West Palm Beach. The next two slides that we're going to cover are, I think, really good in providing us a comparison of the existing condition, what is out there on these sites today, and contrasting it to what's proposed, because I think that comparison is very useful to see that there's a change with this application that is significantly reducing vehicular conflicts and kind of cleaning up what is today a access configuration that really wouldn't be able to be approved today. It predates some of the existing or the previously existing driveway classifications. Are we able to continue the presentation?
So Mayor, it's your discretion. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding, so it's really...
Yeah, you can take a few more minutes.
Okay, I'll be brief. This shows the existing configuration where there are, along the US 1 designation, which is 6th Avenue, there's an access point that's controlled by FDOT. The frontage of this site along US 1 in this section is not long enough to actually allow a driveway at all that meets FDOT criteria. So part of going to FDOT and having them review this, proved that, and so the driveway that's there today does not meet the current spacing standard. So that's really not an option for a driveway to remain on US 1. Then on Northeast 2nd Street, you can see that there are two separate driveways and then three actual ingress or egress movements, two ingress movements and one egress movement that are allowed. And I'd like to especially point out the one that's labeled number 2 on the screen, which is right at the stop bar. There's very little separation for that movement from the signalized intersection there. And if somebody is coming off of US 1 and trying to turn into, if that restaurant were to be reactivated, which easily could happen, there's no room for a vehicle to store there if they were trying to make that left turn, and if there's a vehicle waiting to turn to come out onto US 1 or go across the intersection, that path would be blocked. And then on the alleyway, there are 3 different connections over there. So it's a kind of I'd almost call it a hodgepodge of 7 different access driveways, 1 on US 1, 3 on 2nd, and then 3 on the alleyway. Contrast that to the proposed plan, which significantly cleans that up. We'll get into the trip generation next, but the overall project reduces trips compared to what's there today if the restaurant were to be reactivated, and just really simplifies it into one ingress driveway on the alleyway, and then one egress driveway onto 2nd Street. And really, given the dimensions of the site, provides both a clean path of travel for vehicles, but also a way that, where the circulation can work to access the units as well. As I mentioned, this table shows the trip generation comparison. On the top is what's proposed with this application. Highlighted in those red boxes is showing that it would generate 4 trips in a single hour in the morning and the AM peak hour, and 4 trips in the PM peak hour, a single hour in the evening. And then contrast that to if the restaurant were to be reoccupied, which really takes no approval from this board. It would just take an owner going in and applying for a business license. 12 trips in the morning peak hour and 12 in the evening peak hour. So again, a reduction in total trips compared to what has historically existed here in the past. One of the concerns I think that had been raised previously was about what I started to allude to, which was traffic that's heading westbound on Northeast 2nd Street heading toward US 1, and as it approaches the traffic signal, it has to wait until the signal turns green. And there was some concern that the cars that are heading westbound toward US 1 would block the path, would block the driveway that's proposed for the site exiting onto 2nd Avenue. And again, keep in mind there are 2 driveways that connect to 2nd Street today. But there is room between the traffic signal, and I'll go back real briefly. You can see where it shows, Northeast 2nd Street, that there are 3 cars. There's room for 3 cars between the driveway and US 1. And what was observed during January observation period, which is the peak season of traffic, there were 72 cycles of that traffic signal that were observed. 71 times the queue of cars westbound waiting at the signal as it was red was 3 vehicles or less. There was 1 time that it was 4 vehicles. And then in the evening peak hour, there were 60 consecutive cycles of that traffic signal that were observed. And during that observation period, 58 of the 60 times, there were 3 cars or less waiting at the red light to go out toward US 1. So 2 times it went to 4 vehicles instead of 3 or less. And so really the incidence of that driveway being blocked is very minimal. Again, we were talking about 4 total trips in either the morning or the evening peak hour. I'll turn it back over to Christina briefly to wrap up.
Thank you. And just to wrap up, we have the waiver criteria reflected on your screen. There are specific waiver findings and then criteria related to the CBD. The CBD speaks to, that the waiver shall not result in inferior pedestrian experience along a primary street. Again, we are meeting or exceeding the streetscape requirements along Northeast 2nd Street. We are providing all of the required plantings, providing at least the minimum, if not greater, of the curb zone for plantings and the pedestrian walkway. And then the waiver shall not create significant incompatibilities with nearby buildings. Well, if you look all up and down Federal Highway for the buildings that are on that primary street frontage, some of them do have access off the alley, but those also have access off a primary street. So, for example, immediately to our south, the townhouse project there does have access from both Federal Highway and the alley. Going essentially all up and down Federal Highway, there are most of those, if not all of those buildings, have access off Federal Highway or off the street that's immediately adjacent. The waiver shall not erode the connectivity of the streets and sidewalk network. Again, we're complying with all of the requirements for these sidewalks. The waiver shall not reduce the quality of civic open space. That's actually not required for this project. The waiver shall not create an unsafe situation. We believe that this is actually the most safe configuration because of the constraints of that alley, because it has not all been dedicated. We are trying to limit that 2-directional traffic along the alley and provide for kind of one-way traffic, at least from this project, so that cars can safely circulate. And does not grant or result in a special privilege. Again, this is essentially asking for the same condition that you see on all other commercial properties and residential properties within the CBD along Federal Highway and along most of the other streetscapes as well. And so with that, I think I will wrap up, and our team is here and available to answer any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To the city. I know that's.
Can we switch to the presentation, please? Thank you. Okay. So I think you have a good overview of where the property is located. It's at 605 Northeast 2nd Avenue. It is within the Central Business District zoning, within the Central Core Subdistrict. The density proposed is 22 dwelling units per acre, up to 30 is permitted, and the FAR is a little bit over 2, where up to 3 is permitted. This application was submitted prior to the requirement for pre-approval of using masonry modern style. There has been a code change since that would require that the elevations come forward before the project is heard. So this project actually has received additionally a waiver related to the setback with the prior seated commission that had to do with the corner. At that time, this circulation pattern was, with the ingress coming off of 2nd, was considered and discussed and sent back down to the lower board with direction. And so this is back to you again. The issue around the waiver is to allow the sole vehicular access to be necessitate using a primary street. So let's talk about primary streets for a second, because I do want to get into that for a second. The Central Business District Code is a form-based code. That means that the application of it results in a predictable outcome in terms of the position of buildings, etc. Some codes, for example, will have a minimum setback, and the setback, as long as you're 10 feet, you could be setback 60, you could be setback 20, you don't know how it's going to look. Downtown has a code that results in a fairly predictable form because it allows a wide range of uses. You could have residential, you could have restaurant, you could have retail, you could have office, you could mix them up. And the way that that works in a downtown is that you get an expectation of what the building is going to do along the street. So the Central Business District Code designates streets as either primary or secondary. When they are primary, it means that parking, loading, other, messier uses are not necessarily going to be there. That these are the streets that are going to have the fronts of buildings, that are going to have active uses along them as opposed to service uses, so that we're getting a really high quality pedestrian experience, because downtown relies on more than cars to move around. You park once, you walk to lunch, or things like that. So the streets that are primary are the ones that have limitations on vehicular access points, right? You don't want to build in those pedestrian vehicular conflict points. However, the applicant is testifying basically that it matters that this street, as 2nd goes beyond, is not primary. Well, this is where RM zoning comes in, and RM zoning doesn't rely on a designation between primary or secondary streets. So it really doesn't matter that it stops, because it's a designation that applies only to that zoning district, which is CBD. So you should not, it doesn't mean that this part of 2nd Street isn't also expected to be pedestrian. It's just in a residential district. So that's where that designation is not carrying across. So I just want to make that clarification. So primary streets, if your property is on a primary street, alleys or secondary streets, when present, are supposed to be the primary source of vehicular access to off-street parking. So this is why the waiver is here. If two-way access was achieved from the alley, even if there was a curb cut somewhere else, that you wouldn't be using the primary street for the sole access point. The configuration that is before you tonight requires the primary street access for the project to function, and that's why it's a waiver and you're here to hear it. So this is the alley in question. You can see that the property across the street lines this street. 6 is also primary. You can see there's a curb cut here. But it goes all the way through, so do you need it, do you not? This was actually on a previous version. Here's the alley. It is substandard, and I think the applicant has given you a very good overview of the condition of the alley, both the right-of-way and the obstacles that are within it. However, there are a number of properties here that, rely on the alley for vehicular access, and it's successfully functioning now, and it will get better with the width improvements that would be coming with this project. So, when the previous commission first saw this request, this was how the proposal was all of the vehicular access, both ingress and egress, was being proposed to use Second Street. When the project was sent back to Planning and Zoning Board, the applicant regrouped, they made some changes, they went to Planning and Zoning Board on April 15th, and they presented an ingress pattern from Second and then exiting onto the alley and circling around. The board made a recommendation for approval, provided they change the circulation so that there's a larger amount of stacking while you're waiting to turn left. So what's before you today is the same sort of physical design, but the circulation shifts the other way. So you're going in through the alley and you're coming out through Second, which means if there's traffic, you can wait on your own property now. I also think it's important that while the code really wants an L-shaped building, like lining the two primary streets with the parking and the other uses in the belly, the proposal in front of you reduces the initial waiver request, the vehicular trips coming off the alley, it cuts it in half. It still requires a waiver, but it is an improvement over the initial proposal. In terms of the streetscape, the CBD code also wants street trees along the edge of curb with a wide pedestrian, walkway on the other side. In this case, and in a couple of these side streets in this area of town, the location of utilities requires that we sort of flip that so that the trees go next to the property line, and then people are walking here. This is not the only project that has had to make that adjustment due to the location of utilities, and the code actually allows it and gives us that direction. But if you can't fit it, then you can switch it the other way. The number of trees that are proposed here is consistent or exceeds the requirement. I don't recall, but it certainly is adequate. What the driveway access is doing, however, is not having that consistent spacing that you see along some streets, and so that's the impact there. The downtown requires the detail. We have a standard city detail that requires the paving pattern moves across. Here's an example of it in front of the Flossie building. So that it really is sending both aesthetically, but also noting to the driver that the pedestrian takes the precedent across the curb cut. They have incorporated that detail, and they're required to. There's a new on-street parking space here. So the issue is by the proposed circulation, there's 2 pedestrian vehicular conflict points. So ultimately, this is the issue in front of you, is that given the condition of the alley, is this a reasonable pattern of development? So I'd also like to point out that the comprehensive plan policy NDC 1.1.7 includes this language: standards in the land development regulations, including those guiding compatibility and transitions, such as setbacks, height limitations, open space criteria, etc., may limit the actual density achievable on a specific site. So the criteria that the commission uses to decide whether to grant or deny the request are the waiver standards that the applicant put in front of you, and ultimately the ones that you need to, evaluate with this request is whether or not it's adversely affecting the neighboring area. Is there creating an unsafe situation with the additional conflict point? Is it a special privilege? And there have been other projects that they take access. It's not always the only way in and out, but it's happened. The code allows it. And then for CBD specifically, because if you're going to get a waiver from the code that is a much more predictable form than other zoning districts, there's additional criteria. Is it going to create an inferior pedestrian experience along the primary street? Is it a significant incompatibility? Does it erode the connectivity of the street or sidewalk network? And does it reduce the quality of a civic open space? This project is small enough that it doesn't have a significant civic open space requirement. So this project has had a lot of public meetings. And to be clear, that's by design, because we have an award-winning form-based code. if you were going to ask for a waiver, it goes through a recommendatory body first before it comes here and before there's final action on the site plan. So it's intended to make sure the neighbors can participate in the decision and that, there's adequate public participation. And as you can see, the process has adjusted this proposal towards a less impactful request. And so that, let me see. And then the only other things I would add are that while, yes, there was a restaurant here before with multiple curb cuts, this is an entire redevelopment. And so while it's better than the restaurant, we're starting from scratch. And so you really have to weigh, I think, the condition of the alley, the circulation pattern that's surrounding this property, and the proposed design resolution to address it, as opposed to that there could be a restaurant here instead.
Just to follow up, if the statement made that if somebody opened up a restaurant now, they could open up a restaurant here.
And they
under the use thing.
absolutely,
Right. I understand if it's a new
but
development.
This is a total new development.
Right. No, I understand why that's not applicable. I'm just saying, but the statement that if somebody wanted to open a restaurant here, they could open a restaurant there.
That is accurate as
well.
well.
Okay, just wanted to confirm that.
Yes. And so that concludes my presentation. I'm here if you have any questions.
Okay. Any questions yet for staff? Okay. All right. To members of the public, you can speak for or against this. Each one has 3 minutes. The floor is yours.
And if they could just state whether or not they've been sworn.
Oh yes. Yes. They were sworn.
Yes, hello, Jill Schifferly, 321 Palm Trail. Good to see all of you again. I've spoken with all of you regarding this project, I think, at some point just over the past year. Because I only have 3 minutes, I would like to just say a few things. Number one, to approve a waiver, it's pretty clear that the conditions that need to be met are A, shall not adversely impact the neighboring area. We're the neighboring area. We've been pointing out for about a year that this adversely impacts us. It's a key entry to the neighborhood, and it creates quite a bit of traffic really close to Federal Highway. Coming in off that 2nd Street, it is a big impact. Secondly, shall not create an unsafe situation. I personally walked that street. That's the key way for neighbors to get to and from Atlantic Avenue, Pineapple Grove. When you're going across there as a pedestrian, adding another driveway in the middle of the block that cars are going to be going in and out of, and people try to get across that light, that's an unsafe situation. 3, shall not result in an inferior pedestrian experience. Again, as a pedestrian, just because you've added a driveway and you've added more concrete and you've taken away trees, that is really impinging on the pedestrian experience. And I would add that the Renaissance Village just to the south is, unlike in the analysis, it's actually a very positive pedestrian experience. So that said, and nowhere in the waiver requirements does it say because the alley is not wide enough at the northeast corner of the property, should that be a reason for granting a waiver? So I would just leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, good evening all. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, good to see you always, Mr. Moore. And my name is Jack Indicue. I live at 419 Northeast 8th Avenue. I'm here on behalf of the Palm Trail neighborhood. You guys?
You're requesting 6 minutes?
Yeah.
The association? Okay.
Yes.
That means, well, unless you want the others to speak.
No, we're good, right? I'll take 6. I probably won't need 6, and I'll comment on that in a minute, but appreciate it. So you know why I'm here. The Palm Trail neighborhood opposes the waiver request. This is our fifth time, frankly. Two SPRAB meetings, one commission meeting, planning and zoning. Our arguments have not changed. This is still an unsafe environment. None of the conditions, or most of the conditions, are not met for granting a waiver. And even with the new designs, a waiver will be required. Our proposals have been concise, as we shared in our letters. One thing that's interesting, this is our fifth meeting. This is the fifth presentation with different arguments, different graphics, different traffic engineer. How many rabbits do you have in your hat to just try to justify this project? Maybe there's just something wrong with the fundamentals of this project. I know I have 3 minutes or 6 minutes, whatever it may be. The applicant, an out-of-town applicant, comes in here, fancy slides, unlimited time, team of lawyers, traffic engineer that he paid for, and a rebuttal at the end. Our position has been clear. We've been polite throughout the process. We're not camping out on the front lawn of City Hall. And also, during the recent election, folks, this is not just about Palm Trail. The residents of Delray have spoken. They sent a very strong message that we got to manage this craziness here in town. There is a clean code. Why break the code? Why grant a waiver? So I think it's upon you, the established commissioners and the new commissioners and the mayor, to really reflect on this strongly and weigh whether you side with the residents or prefer some of the maneuvering, the extensive maneuvering that changes constantly from the applicant. That's where I want to leave it. Thank you so much. I ask you to do the right thing.
Are we having anyone else? I guess he just took 3, so.
Good evening, I'm Mark Ronalds, 722 Northeast 2nd Street, the same 2nd Street that runs by this. A couple of things that were said today are completely irrelevant. One is what was there now. That's not what you're approving or not approving. And frankly, it's not clear to me what was said, that if another restaurant came, but that's irrelevant. Second thing that has not been discussed, there's only 2 parking spaces there. So there's going to be, they talk about the amount of traffic, but last time I noticed, there's a lot of other traffic that comes. There's FedEx, there's the post office, there's garbage trucks. In this particular area, there's landscape trucks, there's repair, there's about 5 houses under construction. So all of those houses require traffic. So there's going to be a lot more traffic going there. We're just looking at a subset. Special privilege. Granting a waiver is a special privilege. The reason other people have the special privilege of going like like Renaissance Village has access to federal is because the rules were different. So if you want to change the rules back, fine. By the way, there were drug houses there. So are drug houses still allowed because there were drug houses there? Of course not. Some of the statements made to you, ladies and gentlemen, just don't make sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cynthia Lloyd, 239 Northeast 7th Avenue. Thank you so much. I've stated before I've been in your shoes, and so I really respect it, but some things that I've brought up before at previous meetings still trouble me greatly. It appears that staff, to the best of my knowledge, has never been to this site. I know that I've certainly never seen them, nor have ever met with them. And that challenges me when they actually are giving a reading on their viewpoint of this. Because if you are standing on the opposite side of Federal and you look down, here's what you notice. The street is much wider on the other side than when you enter where Palm Trail is. That in itself is a traffic issue which I have never heard the paid-for expert address. Additionally, we are currently having other construction done across the street. That means now it's a different picture. I'm also challenged by people that buy property and then don't want to adhere to the actual rules when they bought the property. The other thing that I find really, really interesting is that while I believe that we should all respect people who own property, there is a significant difference between the impact of those of us who have invested in this community, who will be left with whatever wreckage is done to our neighborhood. They will move on, the buildings will be sold, and we will have to deal with the after effect. That is a real challenge. And so I would echo what you heard before, that I think that residents have become weary of that. It's fine to be an owner, but it's even better to be a good neighbor. So the other thing that challenges me is how we see things shift so routinely. We look at 3 cars can safely be there. Did anyone look at the actual dimensions that were used for 3 cars? The average car is 14.7 feet. And I ask you all to tell me how many Corollas you see around Delray and in our neighborhood, because most of them are SUVs. Those are 16.5 average, which means this traffic expert, what kind of dimensions were being used? And why isn't there an independent city traffic expert? Because I am really challenged by someone who is paid for by the applicant to do well by a neighborhood. And that's no disrespect. It's just sometimes there can be a bias, and it's regrettable, but let's face it, it happens. So from where I sit, I hope that the city becomes more engaged with the neighborhoods that are impacted by the reports that they give to you. And I appreciate your consideration and ask you to not allow these waivers to be granted for special needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public? Does anyone want to cross-examine? Is there any cross-examination of staff? Any cross-examination of the witnesses? Any cross-examination? Seeing yes.
Not cross, rebuttal.
Rebuttal, absolutely.
So just a rebuttal on several points that were noted by the residents. I heard that this project creates quite a bit of traffic. Again, you saw the traffic calculations that were provided from our traffic engineer for this project. It's 8 townhouse units. That means 4 a.m. peak hour trips and 4 p.m. peak hour trips. If you average that out, that's 1 vehicle every 15 minutes. So it is not a substantial amount of traffic, and it is a reduction from reactivating the site from what it could be today. I heard, again, that it creates an inferior pedestrian experience with more concrete and taking away trees that are otherwise required. That's simply not true. We are providing a wider pavered walkway, and that's because the pedestrian streetscape requirements need and necessitate those those larger walkways to enhance walkability in the downtown. So we are not taking away landscaping that would otherwise be required. We are providing at least the minimum amount of street trees, at least the minimum landscaping that's required along those frontages. And again, in many instances, we are exceeding the pedestrian streetscape requirements. We're actually providing more landscaped area to enhance the pedestrian experience. I heard that the code does not or should not allow for waivers. Well, that's exactly why there is a waiver process in the city's CBD regulations. It does provide for a form-based code. It tries to account for all of these different situations, all of these mixes of uses, but it doesn't account for everything. There are certain properties that are different. There are certain projects that are different. And that's why the waivers are included in the code. That's why there are criteria outlined, and I've gone through them to demonstrate how we've addressed each of the criteria. I've heard that there are lots of trucks that go through this area, FedEx trucks, garbage trucks. Well, where do you think a lot of those trucks go? They go along the alley. We've actually seen in meeting with the community one time, there was a utility truck doing work along that alley immediately where we would be accessing the site. It was there when our team went into the meeting with the community, and it was there when they left over an hour later. So those types of delivery trucks, utility trucks, they're often situated in the alley. And so to have two-way ingress and egress off the alley, basically your only source of ingress into the project off the alley, it creates those additional conflicts. When there's a delivery truck situated there on maybe 16 feet of paved surface, it's difficult to navigate around that if it's possible at all. So we're improving that. We're also improving the pedestrian experience along the alley. If you look at those graphics, there's a 5-foot pedestrian walkway that we're providing along the alley adjacent to this project as well. I also heard many comments about plans constantly changing. We're constantly maneuvering positions. And you know what, we have been, because we've been trying to take the conversations that we've had with the community and work to address them, work to resolve them. We've removed a fence that was proposed along 2nd Street, again, to enhance the pedestrian experience, to open up the project more, to create a more inviting environment. We've changed the access now our 3rd time, again, in response to what we've been hearing from the community. And quite honestly, we felt we've made progress with each of those conversations, and then the goalpost shifts. So this is, you know, where we are in response to those conversations. And I do thank the community for all of their time, because we have spent a lot of time meeting with them, and they have been very open to doing that with us. And so we definitely appreciate that. But all of the changes that we've been making have been in relation to those conversations and to try and be that better neighbor. Our team has spent probably over 2 years at this point working on this project, potentially even longer, because we submitted our site plan. We've been working through these comments. And I think at this point, with all of these changes, we've actually gone through 8 different rounds of review with staff. I'm sure they are kind of tired of seeing all of our projects come back through. But they have reviewed it for consistency with the land development regulations. I heard comments that we're not meeting other requirements of the code, and that's simply not true. Again, after 8 rounds of review, we have minor technical cleanup items at this point, depending on what happens here this evening. But we are meeting the FAR. We're at 2.0, where the code requires or allows up to 3.0. The code allows a density of 30 dwelling units per acre. We're providing 22. So, you know, to the point Anthea raised in terms of not always being able to develop the maximum. We're not trying to here.
We're going beyond rebuttal a bit, and we're representing. So
okay,
I
think that was actually my last point. Again, our team is here. Our traffic engineer is here to answer any questions. So we're happy to assist. Thank you.
So,
Anthea.
Yeah, I'm not going to belabor the point too much. I want to make it really clear. So the Technical Advisory Committee for the city is comprised of multiple departments, including the city engineer. They're the ones that write the comments over and over again for reviews. 8. So we've talked a lot about this access request. And my testimony is that the alley in its current form, which is substandard, is adequate to serve multiple properties now, and adding only 4 trips in peak time, I mean, it should be able to accomplish this for this project. The other thing that I want to just make sure we're clear on is that the number of trees meets the code. It's the pattern and position that's being impacted by the driveway. And that's all I have, unless you have other questions.
Thank you very much. To the commission, Mr. Long.
I'm happy to get the ball rolling since I was one of the 2 commissioners who saw this before, and we sent it back to that lower board. I take a lot of notes because I want to make sure I'm getting all the points. I record a lot of things that were said by our folks during public comment. And by the way, I want to thank our members of the Palm Trail HOA who showed up tonight. I just walked during our TPA audit last week with Jill Schifferly and Jack Indescu, and I know that these are folks who are extremely passionate about their community and extremely engaged, and appreciate you being here and hearing your commentary. And I think because of your commentary, you have effectuated a much better version of this project that's before us tonight. So I want to go back to that for a minute, because we agreed with the commentary that was made last time from the public. That's why we, as a commission, unanimously agreed to send it back to kind of reevaluate that alternative circulation pattern that is that one-way circulation pattern with the alley ingress and the egress onto Northeast 2nd Street. So to me, that's a major improvement. And we talked about the width of the alley, and I don't want to misquote you, Anthony, but you just said that you believe it's adequate for multiple properties with the width increase.
Yeah, I mean, this is a view that we're presenting now of a significant amount of traffic that is handled on the alley today, and given the applicant's traffic projections, it's anticipated that it can handle the traffic.
Okay, great. Now we know that they exceed the streetscape, meets the frontage standards. It reduces the trips compared to the former restaurant use. And I want to go back to that for a minute, because I don't understand the argument that the former use or the possible future use of this isn't relevant. I think to me it's relevant, because we're comparing, 2 driveways to what is currently 7 driveways and more traffic, and that's a potential use if this doesn't get approved. So why would we not compare the 2 scenarios? To me, that we should be comparing those 2 scenarios, because it's the 2 things that this could potentially be. And a restaurant wouldn't need they'd already be entitled to that, like was already mentioned. They wouldn't need to really come in with anything except a new permit, new business license, whatever. So I do think that's pertinent, that this does reduce the use compared to what it was and what it could be. And regarding traffic, I just want to address I don't think it's appropriate to suggest that their traffic engineer was acting in bad faith. I don't ever think it's appropriate to impugn someone's professional integrity. And frankly, no engineer that I know that's licensed is going to come to a public hearing and say anything that's not factual and risk their license to do so. So I just want to throw that out there. I just don't think it's fair to make that assessment that their engineer would be giving us false information. And I guess I'll try and wrap this up so my colleagues can have a chance to chat here. This passed through planning and zoning. This iteration passed through planning and zoning after the improvements that were made based on the community. And just to kind of reiterate what was said during kind of the rebuttal about the maneuvering and the rabbits in the hat, to me, that's the process working. That's what we want to see. We want to see projects evolve based on community input. And I mean, frankly, to me, this feels like a win. We had a very engaged, organized community outcry over this that asked for an alternative traffic circulation to be accomplished here, and now that's what we're seeing. To me, that's what we want to see. We want to see an applicant that's willing to spend the time and money to go back and listen to the community and incorporate those. But I'll end with saying that, in my opinion, this does meet all of the waiver criteria to grant this waiver. And my last thing I'll say is granting a waiver is not a special privilege. Thank you.
Would you like to go next?
Yes, please. So I had several concerns. The first one is I saw the new plan where the cars will exit only onto 2nd Street. Human nature being what it is, the shortest path to their garage is going to be entering through there. How do you stop that? I mean, short of Chief Major sitting there 24/7. I mean, how people are what they are.
I'm going to bring our traffic engineer up for that.
Send Jeff.
Again, Chris Hagan from Kinley Horn. I mean, to be honest, I mean, I've seen, and everybody here in South Florida driving has seen a lot of things. But I mean, there are ways through an HOA for some enforcement mechanisms to be implemented. That is there are enforceable. Obviously, you don't want to spend code enforcement time dealing with an issue, or police time dealing with an issue like that. But signage would be placed that says "Do not enter" and makes it very clear. There will be very clear signage there, and so it is enforceable if that's an issue. And that's really how issues like that are addressed all over the place. And there are certainly lots of examples of one-way streets here in the city and all over Palm Beach County, et cetera. And that's partly how that's addressed. But again, some combination of HOA through or other regulation would typically do that. But it will be clearly signed and marked that that's not allowed.
Okay.
Can we narrow the opening so that it's not 24 feet wide, since it's only one way? Like that way?
It's not. Yeah, the driveway itself, so the interior is 24 feet because that's what's needed for backing between the garages, but I believe the driveway dimension is 16 feet, which does narrow it, and that's probably fire. We'd have to also confirm with the fire department what a minimum is while balancing life safety needs.
Okay. The second concern is, and it's been raised, but where will people park when they have a guest come over? I mean, there's only 2 spots, and if their garage looks like mine, you can barely get 1 car in there. So where does a guest park? And somebody had suggested to me that they could park in front of the garage door, but I'm thinking then that's not a good scenario for our fire department. And if you don't get close enough to the building, it's really tight.
Yes, and that's certainly been reviewed as part of the site plan and is probably going to be a discussion point as the site plan moves forward as well. We do have the on-street parking spaces that account for guest parking per the code requirements. In addition, each unit does have a 2-car garage. It is large enough to accommodate 2 vehicles, and these HOAs most often now that are being implemented have prohibitions on storage so that people don't just keep storage in their garages so they are unable to park. So that's how this through the site plan is being accommodated.
Okay. The third thing for me is when I went out and walked the site with some of the residents, that alley is really, really tight. I mean, there was a FedEx, when we were there was a FedEx truck parked in there. You couldn't get by. Tony
Correct.
Stewart couldn't have driven by that truck. There's no room. So I'm really concerned about that. A FedEx truck is parked there and a resident can't get through there to get into the garage.
Yeah, no, that's quite frankly our concern as well. That's why we were proposing the access off Northeast 2nd Street for ingress and egress initially, because that's what we saw in visiting the site. So, in this type of situation, if that happens, if somebody's coming from Federal Highway going east to access the alley, if they see it's blocked, they are going to have to continue along through the community and kind of backtrack from the north down the alley.
But to be clear, there's impediments there. There's plantings in the current right-of-way that would be removed, and you're going to gain 2 more feet from this side as well.
Okay.
So there's 4 feet right there that will magically appear.
And then this is just a comment. I'm not disputing your traffic study, but when I was there with the residents, we were out there for an hour and change. 3 cars can barely fit in that space to not block the 2nd Street entrance. But what we constantly saw were landscape trucks that were pulling rigs. And 2 of those, the hole's blocked. Now, it's less concerning if they can get up to the alley and get in through the alley. So that's an improvement to the plan.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we made that switch after having those conversations with the community and hearing some of those concerns. We made the switch to have ingress to the alley so that it provides that additional room for stacking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. You wanna go?
Just want to say that just thankful for the Palm Trails residents that are coming out. You are very passionate, and I've met with a couple of you in the past and not recently. And also to the applicant, the commission did send you back, and you willingly worked with the community to modify that entrance area. The only thing that I have is, Anthea, do you have any other comments in regards to the safety? To the number one, to the safety of the modified entrance.
All right, so, and the site plan will detail this out, but Mr. Hagan's the expert here on that. There's a couple of things, right? They did the detail the way that downtown requires it. All of those things send subliminal cues that you're entering a pedestrian area, so that helps. Nonetheless, it is a second conflict point between where people are walking and where a car is moving. And so it's never great to have two of those. The alley is obviously you're crossing a street, it's a small intersection. And then I would have to defer.
Is there no end to the time that these people have to present and to rebut? Is there no end to that?
They're replying to they are replying to a question that, from a member of the commission.
Yeah, just to opine on the safety. First of all, whenever there's one-way traffic flow, it's just fewer vehicle conflicts with other vehicles. So by separating the inbound and outbound movements for this, it reduces the amount of overlapping and conflicting vehicular movements. So that is inherently just enhances the safety itself. And given the alley and some of the impediments that are there still are, even with the additional 2-foot dedication that's mentioned, there are utility poles and other impediments that are in the alley, and those aren't going away. And so because of the presence of those, they constrict the flow of traffic in the alleyway as well. So really, when we looked at this, it was better to just say, well, let's have only one of, that's why the starting point was having no traffic on the alley. But when that was clear that was a non-starter, it was moved to say, well, let's split the difference, move one direction to the alley and have one direction internal to the site. And again, that separation and avoiding the impediments is a safer condition.
Thank you.
Okay, no further questions.
Commissioner Casal.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation, and I do appreciate all the efforts you made to make this work. But I'm curious, if you don't mind, Anthea, Mr. Marker did ask a good question about the vehicles. There's no way to incorporate additional parking looking at the plan.
So thank you for circling back to that. So the parking requirements downtown, this is a unified site plan.
Right.
So it's per bedroom.
Right.
They have to have 18 spaces, I think ultimately is how it worked out. So they have 2 per garage. And
Right.
I know everybody puts their holiday decorations in there and they don't park, but they're going to have to because there's not anywhere else. And then there's 2 new on-street parking spaces
Right.
that are provided, that are being created by the applicant, navigating through DOT on 6th and then also the local here. And so when you create new on-street parking, which is available to anyone in the public arguably, but is considered an asset downtown, lets you count that towards your requirement. So they technically meet the parking requirement for downtown.
Okay, and would you just let me know when you said that on one of the slides it said that SPRAB recommended a continuance initially and then ultimately denied 4-1. Why was that?
So the version that SPRAB saw, if I'm correct and if I'm not, Ms. Blinky, please jump in. They saw this proposal, which was 2-way access only off of 2nd. And just between the impact to the street section, to the streetscape, not using the alley at all to disperse the trips off of the main sidewalk area, they were not unsupportive. It came with the other waivers to the previous commission. Previous commission granted one and then discussed whether there was a way to improve the circulation and sent the applicant back with that direction to the lower board, which became Planning and Zoning Board because we changed some things. So Planning and Zoning Board saw the circulation pattern and the physical design that you're seeing in the middle,
Okay.
which was coming in from Second out onto the alley. There was still the concern that it's so close to the intersection, there's not a ton of queuing. Whether you're driving Corollas or SUVs, it's really close to the intersection. So the board for PZB voted to recommend approval, provided that they change the circulation pattern to what's before you today. And it was a 5-2 vote to approve with the condition that they come in the alley and out Second.
Thank
You finished?
Yes, thank you.
Great. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you for everybody coming out. I don't really have an issue with the trees because they're squeezed together, so I was fine with that. And even alley width, by the time they get the dedication to the 2 feet on each side, the alley will be sufficient. I'm more challenged with, there's a great effort, this is a challenging site, and there has been a great effort to try to squeeze everything into this site. And by looking at all these other kinds of things, and when I look at how many times, and I understand people have gone back to the trade that they made changes and they keep making changes, but all that suggests to me, you had on the screen, if you could bring up the comp plan 1.1.7, which I always look as the coverall to everything. Even though the regs say you should have a certain density, even though you should have a certain setback, even though you should have certain things, sometimes the site itself is such that you limit what you can do on the site. You know, I go up Federal Highway to the Walgreens on 10th, going south, and you can't turn left there and go into the Walgreens. They make you go all the way down and come in. Challenge site, same kind of deal, corner of two principal roads. They had to go down to turn into that road, and then the exit going north is on the other side. We have a similar situation here. You know, ideally, and look, I happen to think that the code suggesting in the way that we have to have an L-shaped structure is probably a better structure on it. But I still think that this site is so tight that I think that the comp plan envisions this kind of thing to say, no, just because you say you can do 6 units or 5 units or 10 units or whatever many units it is, if the site itself is so challenging, then you go back and you say, look, we just can't do it, notwithstanding what the code says, which is what the comp plan allows us to do, which is kind of where I'm falling in this. I like the site, I like the design, I think the people you have are great. I do think I don't think it's an ideal safety situation, notwithstanding even if the change in circulation coming out on Second in any way, shape, or form. Of course, if they had the other design, everything could come in off the alley. But I'm not trying to redesign the project. My point is, this site is such that I think the comp plan gives me guidance to say, look, this just isn't right for this site. It's not, because it's not right for the neighborhood. And so that's kind of where I'm falling on this. As I said, I like your design. I like the structure. I think the architect's great. I think, having something there other than that restaurant is a great idea. But I just think that this site plan, the way it's set forth, is working too hard to make something fit into a site, which I believe falls right under 1.1.7, and I'm so glad you put that into the presentation, because that's what I had in my notes, that we have to limit the density here so that you can design a site which meets everybody's objectives. And those include safety, those include design, those include, whether you want to come in or off an alley. That's kind of the way I feel. So
Thank you, I agree.
I give it to
motion to deny, excuse me.
Well, okay, are we ready for motions now?
I feel like everybody spoke.
Any other comments from anybody?
Motion to deny resolution number 12-24.
I need a second.
Second.
Let's call the roll.
Mr. Long?
No.
Mr. Cassell? I'm sorry, Ms. Cassell.
Yes.
So sorry.
It's fine.
Ms. Burns?
Yes.
Mayor Carney?
Yes.
Mr. Marker?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much. They can come back with something. They're not going to be dead here. That's what was wrestling all weekend. 1.1.7. You're right. Sometimes the site just doesn't work. Yeah. It's a tight site. Look, I don't feel sorry for them. But it was the same as the Walgreens up there going south. They can't. You can't even turn into it. You got to go all the way down to come in. Anyway, next item on the agenda is, where am I?
7B. Affordable Housing Advisory Committee appointments.
Okay. Nominations for the appointment. We have 4 appointments to the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. You have in your materials all the names of all the applicants and all the backup information. So,
am I able to bring up a discussion point?
You're a commissioner. If you get permission from the chair. Now, you're going to ask, nicely?
I'm just trying to be a good guy.
Okay, yes. What would you like?
Well, Lynn and I had a conversation this week, a really good one, in that I think we all would agree that these advisory committees are very important to us, and certainly the boards are very important to us. And one of the things that I found troubling was when I was going through the materials that were provided. I don't know everybody that's on the list, and what we're provided is a very thin amount of information on these candidates, and there's no process like there is in the corporate world. I mean, when I went on the board of True Value, I went and interviewed with the board. I went and interviewed with the CEO, and there was a process, and I wasn't the only candidate that went in for that. Same with another publicly traded company I was on it. And I feel like we're making these appointments and we're not vetting the candidates so that we can get the right candidates. And I would like to see us change our process here a little bit, where some of us that are sitting up here, or all of us that are sitting up here, have a chance to vet the candidates and meet with them 15 or 20 minutes so we can get a feel for them, because I don't want to make any bad decisions on people that are advising us. It just doesn't ring true to me, and it doesn't hold true with my corporate experience. So I don't know how you guys all feel, but
Could I, if I may?
That's my
I think
opinion.
it's a great idea for you. Some of us know people on this list, but individually, the numbers are on the applications. You can pick up the phone and call any one of these individuals and do a 15-minute.
Well, I could, but like on the affordable housing one, there's a dozen people here.
Correct.
I mean,
but all their applications are here.
But did you?
I understand.
It wasn't enough for me to satisfy my knowledge base.
Do you need more? Do you think that there should be a longer period for consideration? I mean, what are you asking?
I was asking that I think we ought to adopt a policy where we have a review process with these candidates, that we just don't look at their CV and go with it. I'm sensitive to what you said, Julie. You're right. A bunch of these folks I just didn't happen to know.
Right, but if you pick up the phone, their phone numbers are there, and if they're inclined to serve, they should be inclined to sit down with you for 15 minutes. You can boom, 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 schedule them all to come to sit in the conference room, or do it by phone. But requiring everybody to do that when some people might have close relations, or maybe utilizing taxpayer time, I don't know that that's a great idea, but I love that you're enthusiastic and you want to do this well. So I think for sure you individually.
I just think in light of recent events, we can't make mistakes about these people that we're putting on boards.
Well, that is it. I think that's a different situation.
Well, it's pertinent.
How would you
here.
have stopped that if you sat and interviewed Mr. I don't even want to use his name.
Oh, I just feel like in a personal interview, I learn a whole lot more about a person, their character, why they want to serve on the board, than I do reading.
But then I'm encouraging you to do that, 100%.
But what about the rest of the board?
I do my due diligence.
There's a practicality matter too. I mean,
right.
But because when I have an appointment, I kind of read all the resumes, and in my particular case, I mean, I know some of these people.
I know
so
3 people on this list quite well enough to a point.
When I've had situations in the past where I don't know anybody in the list, I call.
Okay.
So.
Can I just?
Yes.
Not to divulge, our great conversation, but what I had suggested was in the city of Boca, what they do is anybody who's interested, in applying to a board, they have to come before the city commission and basically do a public interview. And it shows the board, number one, that somebody is truly interested, they're not just submitting an application. And number two, it gives them a feel for who the person is. So I think that's what Commissioner Mark and I were talking about. We typically do our formal board appointments in July. So, you could potentially devote a workshop to just having people come in, and it's almost like a prerequisite.
Wouldn't you need hours? I mean, you're talking right on here, you have
3 minutes.
3 minutes each?
As we move our hours to commence to 6 o'clock, I'm cognizant of the fact that adding additional time, so maybe we do it in the form of a workshop, maybe we do it, but I'm just saying that.
It's the commission's pleasure. I'm just telling you how Boca does it. And they make it a prerequisite so that you can't even be considered for an appointment unless you take that added step. So
I'm happy to consider, whatever the consensus of the commission is.
I would be supportive of a workshop.
Could we maybe entertain a more robust application process? Because the application, not process, but just application in general, because the applications don't have a ton of information on them typically. Maybe there, and then sometimes just leave questions blank and there's like no information. Can we like make it a requirement that you actually have to like fill out a narrative section and say what your background is, so we have a little more information going in?
I mean, it's in there. People just choose not to answer
Right,
it.
but like we make that like a thing you have, like a requirement. So like that field has to be, so we can't just say no
whatever
answer.
you want. I mean, the clerk does vet the applications, and she could basically find it not responsive and tell the person, unless you complete the application fully, you will not be considered. So
Yeah.
you could absolutely put those requirements
So,
in.
as Commissioner Marker, what I do, because I had the same issue, I didn't know any of these people.
Right.
And I narrow it down based on if someone doesn't bother to like fill out the entire application, I don't even look at them.
I did the same thing.
And I don't look at the ones for a given board that if it's not, if there's a whole bunch of people listed, I narrow it down to the one who it's their first choice. And so I narrowed it down to like 5 people. And that was enough. That was an approachable list for me to start emailing people and calling them and setting up like meetings and stuff like
that's
that.
fair.
That's kind of my method. Everyone kind of has their own. I hate to jam up the process with more public speaking time, but I would be definitely open to like, doing something with the application. So pulling a little more information out of these folks or encouraging them to give us more information, so it makes it easier for us to kind of narrow down that list and spend less of our time trying to like sift through people and have interviews and stuff.
That's fair.
So we can also provide the commission with the application, and if you want to make any additions, changes, or deletions, based on, candidly, it looks like an employment application, so I do think that's why some people just choose not to ignore, to choose to ignore some of those questions because they're really not relevant. We can work on it, and we can look at other municipalities and see what they utilize, and we can bring it before you so that when you make your big appointments in July and August, at least you'll have an updated application.
Right.
And I think I would think that will improve the quality of our boards.
I agree.
I think that's a good step. It'll help us make better choices, and we'll watch it over time.
Yeah.
If it doesn't
and
work, we'll change it.
You should always ask if there's a green board appointment. Reach out to the chair and see if they know any of the people.
Yeah.
Have they come to the meetings?
Yeah.
Things like that. You'll know who's engaged and who's not. There are definitely a lot of resources to help you select.
Okay, so back to the agenda.
Sorry, boss.
That's fine. We have there are 4 nominations we need for the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. The first one will be by Long, second will be Casal, third will be Burns, and I will have the 4th. So, Commissioner Long.
I nominate Rosanna Tartero.
Okay.
Second?
Do we need a sec? Do we going to approve each one individually?
Yes.
Okay. We have a second for a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good. Approved.
I nominate Ms. Dobson.
Second.
Thank you.
Mine too.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. We have a nomination for Evelyn Dobson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, that's fine. Commissioner Burns?
I nominate Desiree Land.
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, none. And I'm going to defer mine, since all 3 have been taken. I need to study the others. So I will defer mine till the next meeting.
And could I make a point as well on this? And this is a little touchy, so forgive me. I know we are only required to meet once a year for this board, and
Right,
then
and they
Mr.
don't show up as it is.
Well, the problem, we are having a problem with attendance, according to staff.
What do you mean once a year?
No, originally when this was created, the requirement was only once a year. Mr. Boylston expanded it well beyond that. And so the question is, we have attendance issues in 3 departments that are attending these meetings. Planning and zoning sends people, CRA and neighborhood services. And they have to sit there and wait, if there's not a quorum, at least 30 minutes.
15, they changed it.
I was told 30. Okay, that was good. But my question is, we seem not to be getting a quorum on a regular basis. And so, well, how many times are they meeting now?
I think we had.
It's actually 3 times a year. They did make a request to go 6 times a year. That's not the case any longer because of the attendance issues and concerns in that regard.
Okay, so it was reduced from 6 to 3?
Recently, legally structured as 3.
Okay.
That is the existing requirement.
It's concerning if we have people apply and we've had people removed because they're not attending, had to actually be removed, and it's only 3 meetings a year?
And interestingly enough, there was a request on part of others. Previous elected officials offered their support to this effect to expand the number of meetings from 3 to 6. There's no need for 6 at this time, and thus my clarification that is 3. That's the structured environment as far as the number of meetings per year.
Okay, I suppose we'll leave it at 3 and try and monitor it, but it's disappointing. This is such an important issue.
Yes.
If people are not showing up.
Yeah, and three, frankly, wasn't enough for this board. At one point, we were very active and we had a very good board, but as you say, recently we had to remove people from the board for absences. However, it is a very important board, and 3 meetings a year just really doesn't get too much done. By the time you make recommendations and bring it to the commission, you're in another year. So, but as of right now,
that's all you can
that's
do.
what we're dealt until we can get a good board.
Thank you for that information. Thank you, Mayor Carney.
Okay, moving on to 7C. This is an appointment to the Downtown Development Authority Board. This is my appointment. I'm going to do Damara Cone.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Passes. Okay. We have no public readings, thankfully, but we do have first readings.
Ordinance 12-24, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Delray Beach, Florida, amending the land development regulations of the City of Delray Beach Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Administrative Provisions, Article 2.4, Development Application and Requirements, Section 2.4.6, Regulation of Uses, to modify temporary parking lot regulations to allow temporary parking lots in general commercial zoning, limited to off-site storage of automotive dealership vehicle inventory, to renumber Table 2.4.3A to 2.4.6A, and designate the Development Services Director to approve uses under intent, to eliminate city engineer approval for grading plans, to require technical advisory committee review of site plans, to require compliance with the site plan and any conditions of approval prior to applying for permit renewal, and to eliminate the requirement for the Parking Management Advisory Board to review the site plan and recommend approval in order to proceed to City Commission, providing a conflicts clause, providing a severability clause, authority to codify, and providing an effective date. And this is first reading, so there will be no presentation.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Good. 9B.
Ordinance 11-24, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Delray Beach, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Delray Beach by amending Chapter 96, Fire Safety and Emergency Services, by adding Section 96.18, Automated External Defibrillator and Bleeding Control Kits, to require defibrillators and bleeding control kits throughout the city for specific occupancies, outlining installation and operation, including location requirements, inspection procedures, maintenance and use requirements, enforcement procedures, and providing definitions for automated external defibrillators and bleeding control kits, providing a conflicts clause, a severability clause, authority to codify, providing an effective date, and for other purposes. This is first reading.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None?
None.
Seeing none? Fine. Comments and inquiries on non-agenda items. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One item briefly, and it's in relationship to a recent weekly report update I provided, as well as commentary offered during this past Friday's goal-setting session relative to the education section and matters related to that. I committed that a June 4th presentation of leadership of the Delray Beach Education Board will be offered that will likewise include an opportunity for the City Commission to offer your thoughts and ancillary guidance and direction with respect to related matters. I bring this up specifically because of some of the feedback offered by the public earlier today regarding Caron Foundation grant administration and any other thoughts and considerations along those lines. It's appropriate that the City Commission be given the opportunity to direct the Education Board as well as staff in terms of any specifics you may see fit with respect to overall expectations. June 4, 2024 is your opportunity to accomplish that via that setting, and the chair of the Delray Beach Education Board will be before you to facilitate that presentation as well. So for clarity purposes and something in which to look forward, I'll offer that background. Otherwise, at this time, I yield and thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ms. Jellin,
I have nothing.
you have nothing. It's only 10 after 8. Comments from the commission. Would you like to go first, Ms. Gasol?
Okay, thank you. I'll go first. I have a lot, so forgive me.
Oh, wait a minute. Would you like to go?
No, everybody's still alert. Artificial turf, I know there's an update on the artificial turf. Perhaps we can just make sure the public knows, because I know the woman that came and spoke had emailed me, and perhaps we can give this to Mr. Edwards to review, because if the city is, maybe the city needs to revisit whatever we're doing. I know the ordinance was implemented.
The ordinance was implemented because we didn't have definitive policies and
Correct.
procedures in the code. So
Right.
it was authorized in limited circumstances, sometimes administratively, but the aspects of the code that address open space and those types of things, artificial turf in the swale, those have never been permitted, and
Right.
the open space is limited.
Right.
And so code enforcement, a lot of the ordinance that was passed did go out, and no properties were cited. People were giving warning notices, and
Okay.
I understand, you see that from the city and you get concerned. But the idea was to encourage a conversation. People do need to come into compliance, even if for some reason the artificial turf was approved, if it cost more than $1,000, you still had to get a permit from the city. And so we're looking into it. Development Services is actually going through all of our permit files, and we are going to
So
restart
perhaps
the
retroactively
process.
permit. Okay, I just know one woman wrote to me and said she had a date to appear in front of code enforcement. So I don't
Okay,
know.
well.
Sometimes people are mistaken. I'm just letting you know that.
The notices were not really sufficient, because they gave people 5 days to come into compliance, and that's absolutely impossible. So we are reaching out to property owners. They will be given 90 days to come into compliance, but we are doing a cursory review before we go out to people to ensure that the notice was properly issued.
I will say that the guy, I did speak to code because I had someone call me as well, and I just called, so what's the name of the person? He said, look, we're not really, we're informing everybody of the rule. They're not really busting anybody's chops at the moment, but,
I had 3 very angry attorneys reach out to me, and so we've been dealing with it, and I've
Okay.
assured them that we are looking into it, and
Thank you.
you were not one of them this time.
Okay, second item, speaking of code enforcement on our website is not searchable. If you go to code enforcement and you do a search, you cannot, under a name, say for example, you can't pull up anything because each of those agendas has attachments to them. So they're not searchable at all. So you would have to go pull up each meeting, click on the agenda, and search it. It's impossible. I'm hoping we can figure out a way to change that. Another thing that I'm wondering about is waiver notices. The gentleman came in front of us regarding that wall, the Great Wall, as it's referred to.
Berlin Wall.
Yes, thank you. That one too. And the one thing that he said that was kind of interesting is he never got any notice that anything was going on. And when I asked you, Lynn, you said we don't do notices on waivers, but I feel like perhaps we should.
He didn't have formal notice, but there were emails exchanged. So from that standpoint, staff did reach
Emails
out.
were exchanged because he began initiating
Correct.
the
The
contact.
year before, and
Correct.
when it did come before you, the city staff notified him because they knew that he was an engaged resident and
Correct.
he had issues. So the Florida statute provides minimum notice requirements. We have circumstances where we do more notice requirements. I'm looking at Anthea, who's not looking at me, but you can always do more, and it's incumbent upon the applicant to take care of it.
In light
so to
of that
speak.
situation,
we would have to amend what we do, because as someone who has done this,
Right.
when I get a waiver, I wasn't required to go within the 500 feet. But
Right.
if I were doing a variance, or I was doing a plat, or I was doing something which was going to affect,
My
the
curiosity is
setbacks of the
in
thing.
not having what happened happen again, and I'm
Okay.
worried about that.
Well, I do want to be clear about what happened, because we were made aware of the issue a full year before it came before you by him, and then staff stayed in touch and personally reached out to make sure he knew that it was going to be scheduled on a meeting. Now it's scheduled on a meeting.
Him knowing,
so he got
we didn't know
one-on-one.
though. So we're voting in a wall that I was not comfortable voting in. I'm more concerned about us knowing and how we didn't know. And
I'm
nothing.
pretty- the reports that we
it's
sent
it's
courtesy
a
notice.
broader
It's called a
question of whether or not
courtesy
we should give
notice.
notice for
Right.
waivers.
Right. And-
That's the broader question.
And if you
Not this
want to
particular
do
one.
it,
Right.
you can
No.
change the code,
Exactly.
and then the burden is on the applicant the way we've done it. They have to do the mailers. Staff doesn't do the mailers anymore.
It's not an
I don't
additional
see any
burden on
harm
staff.
in doing that. It's giving the courtesy to our residents. I just don't see any harm in doing it. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's just more work for the Palm Beach County property appraiser. Get the little stickers.
They just push a button.
Thank you. So can we move forward?
We're automated now.
So do we have a consensus on that?
I mean, what do you think, Rob? I mean, do we really just, but.
Can
we
I
have
make
to be-
a point of clarification that it's the waivers that rise to city commission?
Correct.
The
right.
lower
Yes.
boards
The
can
waivers
do a
that
little
you
bit
do
with
administratively,
landscaping.
Yeah.
the lower
I'm
waivers,
sorry,
we're not
thank you
talking
for
about
that.
those.
100%. Thank
Right,
you.
right. Otherwise, we.
It's not like putting an unreasonable amount of work on city staff. If it's something that it's the
It
applicant's
doesn't.
burden, then I have no issue with it.
Right. Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate all
But you're
that.
right. Not for the ones that you do,
So that is a coaching.
That's a yes. Okay, thank you. And then also, Lynn, we talked about the issue with the DDA appointment, and Mr. Market brought it up, that we need to put something in writing that says being in the taxing district does not mean you can have a virtual office in the taxing district.
Yes, I mean, I think the intent behind the statute is that it would be a brick and mortar.
It's a
I mean,
physical office is what the
It's a physical
statute
office. I mean,
contemplates.
so we can, maybe in the application process, you can do that.
Okay.
But I do want to say this, we should never make policy based on an outlier.
I
right?
agree.
So sometimes you are going to have these situations where they're not the norm. In all the years I've sat here, Mayor Carney, I'm sure you're the same, we've never had this situation. So I understand what you're saying, but we just have to be careful that we're not constantly just being reactive
Totally
to one
agree.
situation.
But I also think we're seeing a lot of more incubator places, virtual offices, and things like that. So I'd like to avoid this. Now, maybe you just put something in the application that says physical office.
Or you can just have a policy. And my concern with the DDA is that it is governed by statute, and so, it was approved by referendum, and it was a process, so I'll look at it, I'll consult with the DDA's board counsel and see what he says. The commission may just have a policy that you're not gonna approve somebody that doesn't have a brick and mortar lease.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I'm not suggesting beyond that, but obviously we need to make sure, because that person got approved with a virtual office. So that it happened, so how do we not have it happen? That,
Can I just ask a question on that too? So what happens if somebody applies and they're in a seed building or a WeWorks building, and it,
How do we know?
yeah, how do you know? Like,
I mean, we can add to the application, I guess, is this a brick and mortar building or is this a virtual lease? Sometimes the lease, we do require the lease now, which we didn't require before. The lease will tell you pretty much.
The address.
You can
Just
figure it
look
out
it up.
that way.
Fair point.
You can ask people to be more transparent. We'll just ask a simple question, is this a brick and mortar lease
I mean, you
or?
can have a bona fide person working out of their home that uses an executive suite as an office, like Kurt Lehman. And he operates out of that building all the time, the 55, whatever it is building there. But, but he also has other places. But that's, he's got a physical, and he's got a lease with the location. And so as he needs it, he uses the conference room or things such as that. But to me, that's an office. In the modern world where people are remote, that's an office. But it's where it's a virtual office where you're not even there, and you got
Right.
essentially a glorified post office box. That's not an office.
exactly. Thank
Understood.
you. Perfect. Lynn and I talked about the auditing firm that was selected for the city out of Michigan. It's a firm versus a single individual. I have concerns about us engaging with a firm. I think that when we've, so the goal of the audit is, go ahead.
Can I just say something?
You may.
So that is coming before you at your next meeting.
Okay, I'll wait for
It's
that.
technically under a cone of silence. You can discuss it.
I didn't know that.
But
I
I also
apologize.
feel like because it's coming up on an agenda, maybe that conversation should.
Fabulous. I'll take that off my list until next time.
Thank you.
Okay, the golf course. We talked about this at goal setting, and I feel I was a little bit less informed than I would like to be about the Mr. Singer. Do we have an RFP with Mr. Singer? Are we contracted with him?
No.
No, we are not.
Okay. So here's why I asked that. Because going back and looking, and I spoke to Missy and a couple other people, we've already put over 750. One person said $1 million, another person said 750 into the current plans that we have at the golf course. So the question is, in the original plan includes the course, the wells, the maintenance building, the bridge, the parking, and the landscaping. And we've spent so much money, and it's 60% done. I got the distinct impression when you were talking, you kept saying, we'll ask Mr. Singer. I feel like we're telling Mr. Singer that we would like to utilize what we already have partially paid for and go from there.
No, ma'am. So since the workshop meeting, the goal setting session this past Friday, May 3rd, I've had an opportunity, in fact, earlier to touch base with Missy Barletto and others to make sure we're on the same alignment to support what you all are talking about as far as that previous plan. That means we
Okay.
connected us in that regard, so I think we're clear.
All right, but it would have been nice if you notified us, because we left that goal setting sort of with it in the air, and I would have liked to have known that. So I appreciate that, because you left the bit and did it.
I thought
We-
we left it in his hands.
Well,
They did. That, if I may, honestly, that's what I took from it as well. And in response to leaving it in our hands, we executed the necessary follow-up, enabling me to provide the responses I just did this evening.
Thank
So we are in alignment. Thank you for the opportunity to proceed as we have. So we will go forward, and I anticipate a couple written updates within the next week or two in terms of next steps.
Well,
Great.
It's
And then
gonna
in the
come
mi-
before the commission.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Ultimately,
Perfect.
that's what happens.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank
Yep.
you. And then also in the time being, we do have money in the CIP. I'm assuming is our plan, Mr. Moore, to do some minimum maintenance on that? Because obviously this is going to take a period of time before they finish the plans and then we get anything done over there.
We are contemplating some thoughts as part of the upcoming proposed budget process for fiscal year 2024-2025, so we'll be addressing that at that time.
Okay. Okay, so next item, the speed cameras. I know you all voted, or some of you voted in the speed cameras in the school zone. I have concerns about that. I just watched a man the other day, and this poor guy had the most beat up vehicle. He had a power washer, that was his business. It was like painted on the side, and he got pulled over for speeding in the kids zone, and he was begging the cop not to give him a ticket. I feel like the speed cameras, while they might provide our city a source of revenue, are really going to penalize people in a way that we probably don't want to. I'm not comfortable with the speed cameras, and I hope we can put it on a future agenda to reconsider it, because when you go look at who's driving through those zones in the morning, it's people going to work, hardworking people getting their kids to school and getting to work, and I don't feel good about it. And those tickets are like, the ticket is about 3 times the regular rate, I think, for speeding, and also sometimes you have to take a course. But my point is, I am concerned that we are going to be hurting the people that don't have resources in the city with that speed camera. That's what I'm going to say about that. No one needs to respond. I just wonder if we can reconsider it. Also,
I would like to respond to that whenever you're finished, though.
okay, thank you. The CAFR, I read the CAFR, 228 pages of our comprehensive annual financial report, and obviously I believe it was completed before I spoke to Mr. Stacy, and it seems we've implemented the time and attendance throughout the city, which is amazing, and I thank you for that, but not in time to not have it remarked about again in our annual financial report. My concern is, I know the auditing firm has to go report this to the Auditor General. So I'm wondering, Mr. Moore, what is it that we're doing in response to that CAFR?
We can follow up with the Auditor General separately in terms of advising them relative to progress on time and attendance.
Okay, could we do that quickly? Like maybe write them a letter and explain to them that we've implemented
We are,
this,
and
show
we've
them some-
actually, months earlier, we've actually began that process, and so we'll simply update that accordingly. So that will be, is separate from the ACFR in that regard, but nevertheless, we will have that opportunity to continue to provide them with a progress report. So yes, ma'am, we will, and we have that underway.
Okay, fabulous. I've got a couple more things. Forgive me. Lori Durant. I know. I'm sorry. Come on. Next time I'll forego. I will. A woman named Adie Hudson. Are you familiar with Miss Hudson?
Addie Hudson?
Yes. She passed away, and apparently she was extremely instrumental in our community. She brought the MLK parade here. She was one of the first, I believe, black teachers at Atlantic High School. She did a lot for our city, and she passed, and people are asking, could we give her some recognition? She was a founding member of the Francis J. Bright Women's Club and a whole lot of other things. So I'd like to consider that proclamation in her name. Thank you so much. That's fabulous. Okay, Old School Square. After goal setting, Lynn and I spoke about the RFP. Guys, I know, stop. This is our job. Well, okay, if you guys keep giggling and stuff, I'm going to have to stop and ask you to stop, and it will take longer. So, anyway, Old School Square. Lynn and I spoke about the RFP process and that it would take quite a long time, and that really we didn't identify enough about what we're asking for and go out. Lynn suggested, and I think it's a great idea, that every one of the people who applied could come in front of us and do a presentation, and then we could select somebody, that we don't have to do a formal process. I'm in favor of that for a number of reasons. I think it'll be much more expeditious. I think we can make a determination. We can have a list of questions if we want them to answer, or we can just let them come in and do, 10 minutes each. All six individuals who sent, or organizations that sent a letter. That's consensus right there.
So do you want to have a special meeting and invite all six in? They can give a 10-minute presentation and then.
Yes.
And it's consistent with your purchasing policies.
Yeah, we would have done that. I think we probably would have done that anyway, but yeah.
Well,
We
that
were
was
gonna do
the
it in
conversation we
time.
were having the other day. It didn't seem like it went over exactly well. But I'm happy. Thank you.
Okay,
And
so
then-
maybe on the 21st, we'll have you circle back after everybody gets all the applications, and then you can give us a date for a special meeting, and Mr. Moore can have his staff reach out.
Fabulous. And then, someone from the audience suggested we might need an in-house traffic expert, and I wouldn't necessarily dispute that. I think it's a great idea. I think I brought it up 2 years ago, but it fell flat. Boom. But hopefully now.
I've actually had this conversation several times, including with Anthea in the back, about whether or not we need some kind of an independent.
Yes, I totally agree with you.
So the people at home hear me, because everyone can hear me here. I actually raised this issue, and I mentioned it to Mr. Moore and to Anthea about whether or not we want to have, because everyone brings in their own traffic engineer, whether we want to have some mechanism built into ourselves that we can have an own independent analysis as to whether, here they come, but we have two coming up.
Tag team.
Well, Missy apparently did not put us on the map, according to.
No, but I can't analyze your traffic problems.
But good.
We have an entire staff of traffic engineers in the Public Works Department, so.
They participate in technical advisory committee when these development applications come through. So even though I don't have them sitting up here with me, when I tell you we talked about it and they think that the alley can handle the traffic, that's because the people that do that part of the review have looked at it. So.
Okay, well then, and then sometimes in the presentation, we should make that a point so that we know, and that if anybody wants to question the traffic engineer, they could do so.
So maybe have them available.
Yeah, have them available. So
That would be amazing. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Okay, and last thing is it's National Tennis Month. Get out there and play tennis. Thank you so much.
Should I go? Mine is very easy.
Please go.
Very quick. I just want to say that I attended the EJS block party along with many of you, and it was fabulous, excellent event, and very engaging for the community. And congratulations to Dupree and the EJS project. I also received 2 requests for recognitions from the city, and I'd like to get a consensus on it. The first one is from the La Bamba restaurant out on West Atlantic Avenue. They are celebrating 20 years in the community. And they are celebrating 20 years in the community. And me too. So one place you can still go, family of four can eat under $100. I would like to get a consensus for recognition for them on their 20 years. And then St. John, I received correspondence from Dr. Caesar from St. John Primitive Baptist Church. They are celebrating 110-year anniversary. And they would like to receive recognition from the city too. So I would like to get consensus to have those two documents drafted.
Okay, great church, good guy.
All right, thank you. That's it, I'm done.
I'll go real quick. I just have one quick thing. I was not aware of the policy on turf, but Mr. Moore, it harkens back to me. We just came out of that Friday session, and Sam Metot talked about turfing over fields. And are we going to be in compliance with our own policy on that?
Yes, sir.
We will be, yes, as a separate consideration regarding parks vis-a-vis residential properties. So we will be compliant in that regard. And we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that via next week's workshop meeting as it pertains to ancillary park improvements.
Okay.
So you're a week ahead of time. Nevertheless, we'll be good to go.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
That's it for me.
Commissioner Long.
Yeah, I just want to also say I was at the EJS block party this weekend. Super fun time. I got dunked by literally the first kid's first pitch. First kid up. I barely got on like the thing, and I was in the water. But it was super fun. Great event. Also, I went to the Historic Society's Twilight Garden event. I saw a couple of you guys there. Really great event as well. They throw an awesome event. So let me just quickly chat about turf and about the police speeding cameras in front of school zones. So with the turf thing, this is kind of an issue that I jumped into last time because when I served in the Soil and Water Conservation District, this came up because a lot of different cities were changing their legislation on it. I did a lot of research on it, ended up doing, writing a couple op-eds about it, doing a couple podcast interviews about it. It was on the radio to talk about it just because I did a lot of research on the whole thing. And I have a feeling this is made by a turf manufacturer. It's not more environmentally sound to have turf. It creates an impervious surface underneath it. They're in the backing, which is like the little pellets that hold it up. They've been found to have PFAS in them, which leaches into the groundwater. Because it's impervious, it creates all these runoff issues which Kent and I talked about last time when we went through the policy issue. Also, it does what's called off-gassing, which is where literally the plastic creates a gas when it heats up because it gets super hot. Actually, it can cause burns to people. And the other issue is that it says they don't use pesticides or fertilizer. You actually are supposed to use pesticides and insecticides for it because it's basically like a giant outdoor carpet that birds and dogs and animals defecate on and other crap gets on it. And so there's no other way to clean it except for putting some sort of pesticide type stuff on it. And the numbers show people actually put more of that on, at least you're supposed to, which ends up, again, all going into our groundwater because it all drains right off the top of the turf. So that's one of the reasons most cities are like getting rid of it or severely limiting it. I actually want to get rid of all of it, period, not including the athletic fields. But I didn't win that fight, but that's okay. But I would really, I guess caution the commission against moving forward with changing what we did or altering that. And I just wanted to clarify the folks that came in and referenced that at one point they were basically allowed to have their whole front yard as turf, and then like the rules changed out from under them. That's not accurate, right? That's not accurate. Okay, I just want to make sure that that's clarified. I appreciate that the situation out there, and they probably spent a lot of money on that, especially if you should move to irrigation, which I don't know why you would do. That sucks for them, but like, sorry. So back to the cameras, they're in front of school zones. That's something we already voted on and approved. We can't just go back and change that, can we, even if we wanted to? How does that work?
No, unless we've taken some type of action, which we haven't.
Okay.
You can always go back. And frankly, if it came back before you for an award, the commission has a right to consider it and could vote no. So.
Got it. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'll make the same point I did back then. It's for school zones. And for me, I'm more worried about the safety of our students that are in our school zones than I am about like people getting $100 ticket. And that's what it'll be when we have the automated system in place. It's a $100 ticket. It's not as much as it would be, as it currently is, frankly, when someone gets pulled over in a school zone. The the system that we're putting in place. So for me, it's just a safety issue, and I'll just leave it at that for now, because if it does come back up, we'll certainly have another chance to discuss it. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Couple of things. I'm going to just echo what Commissioner Long said. I'm more worried about the kids getting hit. I do understand that sometimes the people can least afford it, but if they hit a kid, I don't want to be responsible for having a relaxed approach through a school zone. I slow down, and I'm always in a hurry because I'm always late. But I slow down, so that's what I feel about that. Just want to check on the proclamation. We were going to do something on the sister cities. Remember, we're going to do things we're getting ready to go to wherever they're going. And the kids that are going, we do a proclamation for these young ambassadors for the city of Delray. So that is kind of underway, or?
Yes, sir. So that will probably be before you via June 4th meeting, the Sister Cities Committee meeting with everyone. So we are planning for an authorization to that effect via the June 4th meeting. So Mr. Orris, of course, represents the city of Delray Beach engaging with the Sister Cities Committee in that regard. So we anticipate that in June.
Yeah, I saw you forwarded him the email, so I was just checking. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I said school zone. The time for enforcement for beach parking, has that been implemented yet?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good. I can say something I did. Regarding OSS, Old School Square, I am wondering, because I would hate that place to be dark over the summer, and I was hoping that we were going to have something done over the summer. And a couple of the proposals that I have seen are talking about trying to do a summer are talking about doing a summer program, maybe like this summer. And I would hate to say, just because we're doing the RFP, that's going to be pushed out. Is there a way that we could still try to get one or to look at one of these groups to try to do something with?
We're not doing the RFP, so if we had that meeting in
Right.
a month, we could have them if we did a special meeting and we had them come in 2 or
Right.
3 weeks, we could go.
All right.
Vice Mayor is correct, and that May 21st, I will have on the agenda a summary
that's
of the
fine.
submissions,
Yeah.
and from there you can schedule your date and time for the couple weeks thereafter, sometime in early
Right.
June or so. Make a selection and you go to work.
I just think because I want to get it to sooner rather than later to actually.
That
get
would be the
place
way to
filled.
go,
So
given the
that's fine. That's
consensus
perfect.
haven't been achieved.
You could look at your calendars now and just pick a special meeting date. And then we could provide notice to all the groups to
You
come
can do
in.
that too.
Right, like you could send them a letter tomorrow letting them know they should come in and give a presentation.
Yeah, that we're
If
gonna
they
try-
wish. If they wish.
Yeah, let's pick a date.
And it's not going to be related to their full-time thing. It's just a special. We're going to make it available for a summer.
For the Crest Theater
No,
building.
I think we're doing a presentation on the,
Whatever.
You
whatever.
can decide at that time with the length of the
You
contract or
got
the
the gist of what I meant. I just wanted
Yes,
to try
sir.
to get somebody in. Anyway, I have nothing else. Is there anything else from anybody?
Do you
Motion
want
to
to
do we
adjourn?
want to
adjourn?
pick a date? Let's do
Do
it.
we want to pick a date?
Yeah.
Okay. Pick a date.
Lynn, pick a date.
I'm ready to hit
I'll
the
make
gavel.
myself
Make it
available.
fast.
I'm going to let Attorney Jelen do that.
Me?
Yes.
Um,
Want to do it Thursday or something?
Like Dr.
this week?
I feel like
No.
Dr.
No, I didn't
Strangelove
say
here.
this Thursday,
oh.
a Thursday, like next Thursday.
I think we should at a minimum give
following?
10 days notice, so we could look at the week of May 20th. Although that's is that Memorial Day?
May 20th is not Memorial Day. May 20th, May 27th is Memorial Day. Friday, May 24th. How about May 23rd? Thursday, May 23rd, if you like a Thursday. That's 2 days after your next regular meeting.
I will not be here.
Okay, never
I've
mind.
got an FBI meeting, and I'm going to be in Washington.
How about the following Thursday, May 30th?
Why don't we
There's a
do, that's,
CRA
you're
board
starting
meeting.
to go far out though.
The CRA board meeting is on the 30th.
Yeah, we have CRA.
Okay, never mind.
9, 10. What about Monday, the 20th?
Planning and zoning.
I mean, if you wanted to do it maybe at 2 o'clock or
Why don't we do it
earlier.
at 2 o'clock on Monday, the 20th?
Isn't that a holiday?
No.
No, it's a
That's the
following
week before the holiday.
No, it's not.
We have a regular meeting on
It's
the
Mayor's Day.
21st. If you wanted to do it before the regular
Mayor's
meeting.
I'm
Day,
sorry,
that's
on what?
right.
Regular meeting the 21st, that's correct.
Do you want to do
How
it
about
before the regular
then?
meeting on the 21st?
You could do 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock the 21st.
Perfect.
Fine, well, let me just look at that.
Double check.
On the
Regular meeting begins at 5. The last regular meeting at 5. They begin
yeah,
at 6.
I could do it the 21st. Why don't you do 3 o'clock on the 21st?
Okay. On that
Perfect.
note, we'll get to work via tomorrow's executive leadership team meeting to initiate the invitations for the individuals the organizations who submitted to be here.
Right.
And we will allow 2 hours in that regard. Good job, ladies and gentlemen. We will take it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? We are
Ooh,
adjourned.
that is so loud.
I